right, so I'll call the meeting to order. We'll start with the pledge. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, the board wants to provide ample opportunity for public comment on matters that come before us. Your input is important. If you wish to address an item already on the agenda, we ask that you do so when that item comes up for discussion. If you have a comment on a matter not on the agenda, this is the time during our meeting for such comments. The board would like to remind everyone in attendance that to avoid violations of individual rights of privacy, a member of the public wishing to address the board during this time will not be allowed to make comments about any student, staff member, or member of the general public. Does anyone wish to speak at this time?
So am I on the agenda this time?
You are on the agenda this time. Any other public comment? Okay, moving on. Any recognition of individuals or?
I don't have anything today.
Okay. Moving on to the discussion items. Elementary building project. I spoke briefly with the project superintendent today. Things are definitely winding down. Still waiting on the clamps for the big tower playground piece of equipment. As of yesterday, I think he said the ship date is the 21st of July. Was trying to get a confirmation from the installer that he would be here, shortly after that, but the guy wouldn't commit to that. But hopefully it's still in progress to keep moving. Final cleaning on those two classrooms is scheduled for tomorrow, and A&E Design and Dick Anderson Dick Anderson. A&E Design will be here on Friday to punch list. Once they do the punch list, then Dick Anderson goes and fixes or repairs anything that they mark. And then essentially those will be done with the exception of we're waiting on some LVT potential flooring for the concrete portion that's in those classrooms. Lockers, I think, have shipped to the installer where they will put them together and then bring them down. I don't believe I remember what the install date, but it's coming up pretty quick. Roof, they did a roof inspection on the middle school elementary. I'm not sure I've seen the results or we've seen the results on that yet, as far as if there's needed repairs still or if that one is close to being done. High school roof, they're progressing pretty well. They're making a good time, making lots of noise, but I think that project is moving along. I think that's all I have on elementary.
Yep, sounds good.
Okay. The next OAC meeting with everybody is on the 18th. By then, I think we'll probably be wrapping that up very close.
Should have occupancy.
I would think so.
They were mentioning some along the beginning of August, but they didn't want to lock in that yet.
Right, it'll all depend on what they come up with, I think, on that punch list.
I just don't want teachers to get excited. They can't.
You're getting close though, I promise. All right, any questions on the building project? Okay. I'll let you take the next one, FWP agreement update.
Okay, so our district has entered into a couple agreements with Fish, Wildlife, and Parks and the Land Water Conservation Fund grant project over the years, and it goes back quite a ways. I learned of this when I came on to the school district and worked with the board to seek legal counsel. So I'd like to introduce Elizabeth Kalava. She's our expert that's been working on this and been having conversations with FWP and has found some more information to provide for you guys. We'll talk about a few different ways we can move forward. So, please join us and take it away.
Thank you. I think I've worked with most of you before, but to the extent I haven't, I'm Elizabeth Cullen. I've been working with you guys off and on for about 25 years. So this is a new one though for you guys, and I think it probably comes as a shock to all of you sitting here that the district in 1981 entered into an agreement with Fish, Wildlife, and Parks in exchange for grant money to reserve a portion of your property that would be forever held in an easement for recreational purposes. No one seemed to know that, and it kind of went under the radar. And then in 2019, your former superintendent entered into another agreement for similar purposes. These are all part of the Fish, Wildlife, and Parks land grant management funds, and they provide them to public entities, mainly public schools, so that you can set aside property that you own, and they will help you get playground equipment for it. At the same time, you got another grant for $10,000 have a playground that was accessible to students with mobility issues, or for people with mobility issues. So all of these things have happened over the course of time. But what became an issue was in 2019, you entered into this agreement, the money was received, but you were also in the process of a building project or starting one. And it came to the attention of the folks at Fish, Wildlife, and Parks that the area, the land that you had signed the easement on was also property you were building on, which is a violation of the easement. I don't think anyone sitting here knew that. I'm sure none of you knew about the 1981. So I've been working with those guys to try and figure out how we address this. You can't be the only school in Montana that is built on property that you got a grant on 30, 40 years ago. And they've acknowledged that, no, you're not the only ones, but you're the only ones they know that have done it twice. So an A for efforts on your part, but at the same time, at this point, what they're trying to figure out is how do we resolve this? So far, they've been actually pretty good about it. So I'm going to start with the 2019 grant because that's the easiest one, is you've only spent about half of it. So we're talking about $30,000. They're willing to, if you repay the money that they gave you already, they're willing to just kind of walk away from that one. That's the easiest one. Right now, that turns out to be about $32,000. The bigger issue, unfortunately, is the 1981 grant. Because you built on that property, and the process they have set up through federal administrative rules is called conversion. And that would require you to produce or to purchase another piece of property and dedicate it to recreational purposes. Problem with that now is that it's very difficult probably for you guys to find an affordable piece of property, frankly, that you could purchase and turn into a playground that would serve the purposes of this grant. You bet.
Where was that piece of property? Like which piece of our current building did we build on top of that?
Do you know the answer to that off the top of your head? Okay.
I've only seen the easement and.
Yeah.
Right, I know the 2019
2019
one,
Yeah.
and
So
if you can't answer, that's.
I don't know off the top of my head.
Okay.
I mean, I can, he's told me what, he keeps calling it the property.
Okay.
And I can show you the legal description of it, but I don't know off the top of my head. But what I'm going to ask them to do is to show us, because they didn't know on a map exactly which piece of property we're talking about.
How many acres?
No, not off the top of my head. That I will get, so I wanted to give you guys a heads up of what's going on before we get into the, yes, that one I know. The 1981 piece of property, they're having trouble coming up with the documents on. They have the actual easement itself, but they don't seem to have the legal description necessarily or a copy of the map that would dictate where the property is. So we would need that before we would talk. The other really big issue, yes.
Is these properly filed with courthouse, these easements?
They're filed with the feds, with the Park Service.
So no, when Dick Anderson and A&E did their search, nothing came up.
It doesn't show up. And that in and of itself is somewhat problematic. According to the folks at Fish, Wildlife, and Parks, they were speaking to your project manager in 2019 and told them there is an easement on the property you are intending to build on. But so far, I've received no confirmation that actually took place. In my mind, the bigger issue is the easement that you entered into back in 1981, you've been in violation for some time. And there's a question about whether too much time has passed for them to come back and try and enforce it. And so that would be, I think, our first route is we may have violated some of the terms of the easement, but you sat on it for 20 years.
Well, what's really odd to me is why would they grant us a second one if we're already in violation of the first? That tells me that first one was already null and void. Or why would they do that again? I
Yeah.
guess?
It turns out that according to them, what they're doing is they're closing out this program.
is what they've explained. However, I know that Hardin just got one of these grants about 3 months ago because I did the paperwork for them. So they're not closing out the program. It might be that they are, they're auditing their program, or frankly, it came to their attention because of the 2019. They didn't know about 1981, frankly, and they weren't paying attention to it. But then when they became aware of the 2019 issue, they went back and researched Townsend and they found the old one. So I don't think anyone, there's, to my knowledge, and I've asked folks to look, there's no paperwork here in the district that indicates that you guys agreed to an easement. They have a signed copy of a document. We know that. It's just a question of where on your property it is. But I think there's going to be a bigger issue whether they can actually legally try and enforce it, given that they sat on their rights for quite some time. But what I need from you guys is, I just want to bring this to your attention to let you know I am talking to these guys about trying to resolve it. Figuring out if you guys have an interest in resolving the 2019 one at a minimum. That one, we have no defense for that one, to be honest. We're 100% in violation. When the issue came to the board, or if it came to the board, I don't think anyone was aware of the fact that when you sign an easement, and your prior superintendent signed it, it did not, to my knowledge, it wasn't signed by the board at any time. I don't think there was an understanding that that prevented you from using that property for school purposes going forward. But that's what the terms of the agreement actually stated.
Right, so let me add a little bit, because we became aware of it, as the project got going. But prior in 2018, just shortly after, Vanessa and I got on the board, there was a citizen, private individual that came before the board and wanted to upgrade the playground equipment that was on the property. And what she brought to the board was that she had the grants and the funding to do this. All she needed from the board was permission to do it. So we had a couple different meetings, and she, produced what it would look like, what it would cost, and showed the board that there would be no cost to the district. And it labeled the grants on there and everything, so we looked at that. And so, the board did give approval for that. And the board gave approval to Superintendent Wilkerson, to sign that contract. But, the board itself didn't read it, doesn't matter. We gave the authority, so it does lie on the board for that responsibility. What we found later, once we started that, Fish Wildlife Parks came and said, hey, you guys, then you go through and read the contract, and it says, you've agreed to this land in perpetuity, meaning forever. And that's when everybody on board went, whoa, wait a minute. We didn't realize that's what we had done. So so we've been talking about this off and on, working with BIA, trying to figure out what is, this was before we did know about the 1981. I think very clearly the solution to this one is yes, to pay the $32,903 is if my records are correct. And because it keeps us, in good graces, or at the time we thought, well, at least if they'll let us do that, both parties get to leave happy. We still pay for what, we would have done with the building project anyway, because we would have added playground equipment had we not had all of this brand new equipment. So in my mind, taking care of that or allowing VIA to take care of that, I think is the right solution there.
It takes care of that one, and I think that is the right way to go. And I still think I don't see the Fish, Wildlife, and Parks suing a public school saying, you've got to give us some property. I doubt that we'll get that far. I have a feeling what will happen is we'll come to some kind of agreement that we won't enter into one of these again with them, which would be just fine, frankly. And we call it good at that. But we've got to get rid of that first one, or the 2019 one, before we can start having those serious discussions about the 1981 easement. And what I would like to do is take care of the 2019 one and then get some really specific information for you guys about what properties they're talking about when we would have violated the easement, assuming that we did, because they're claiming, and I think we have. It's just a question of what piece of property we have built on or dedicated to something else, and then have that discussion about what kind of resolution looks like at that point. So
I guess we're talking legal strategy here a little bit, and what we just learned last month is we should probably go to a closed session, because I do have some ideas, but I don't want to air it out to where the audience decides going to hear in a public forum.
And here's where we have a little bit of trouble. The open meeting law says when it's two public entities that might have legal issues, that we don't have the right to go into closed session. That's my only concern. I agree with you. There's a lot I'm actually not saying right now because I'm not going to say it publicly, given where we're at. But should we get into a situation where we need to, I mean, I can communicate directly with Susie, who can communicate individually with each of you without us violating the open meeting law. But if we go into a closed session right now, we would have potentially, if we were challenged, have some issues under the open meeting law. So, but I'm comfortable saying publicly, I think there's an issue with timing with them in the 1981. So,
Yeah, well, I think, I don't know, I guess I'll wait.
okay,
I'd like to talk with you one on one.
absolutely. Yeah. You and I can talk directly as well. So,
I think we had an actual action item on that.
I don't need necessarily the board to vote to authorize me to do this. What I need is a consensus that I'm on the right path of let's get rid of the 2019 one first, and then we'll come back and deal with 1981.
Well, that's part of what.
That's part of you want to talk about? Okay.
Yeah. I think there needs to be a contingency portion of that might help us with the second.
Okay.
little strategy.
Okay. Well, why don't you and I chat? And then if it fundamentally alters where I think we're going, then we'll come back.
Everybody else, I guess.
That seems okay to me. You want to do that? We're not obligated to find no, right?
Nope.
I guess Jason would ask him.
I just want to know that the board, is in agreement with continuing, via continuing to work.
I think that's.
Okay.
I'm going to recuse myself on this.
Yeah.
I have some thoughts too on both sides, but I do work for Fish Wildlife Parks.
There you
Just
go.
in full disclosure.
Okay. No,
So
that's
that's
fine.
why I'm not involved in this conversation at all.
Okay. No, that's fine.
Yes, like I said, we've been dealing with this for a little while now. And
Yes.
part of the problem is there's been a lot of turnover with the individual in charge of this at Fish and Wildlife Park.
There have been. Yeah. I've now spoken to like 3 different folks. They've all been great. And Kevin, the most recent person I'm talking to, has been very patient and great about providing information, as much as information as he has. But I think we're at a point now where we've got to deal with how to move forward. So. Okay.
Yeah, thank you for the
Okay.
update.
No problem. And then, Chase, if you want to Susie can give you my contact info, you can call me and then we can chat. And if anything is fundamentally different, then we'll come back.
Okay.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move into the committee reports.
Okay, so for activities, the board, the committee for activities did agree in supporting girls wrestling moving forward. As far as baseball goes, we're going to look into the potential of the use of the city baseball field and work more on getting a cost or a budget put together of what the baseball program would cost. So those are the next steps in looking into boys baseball at the high school level. For the girls co-op with soccer at this time, we didn't feel that the board didn't feel that or the activities committee didn't feel like it was feasible. We haven't been able to get response from the partnering school district. Transportation costs and the co-op costs would be more than we can commit to at this time. For safety and facilities, we talked about main safety goals and priorities for next school year. One of the first of them being identification and badging for all staff, substitutes, approved volunteers. We talked about evacuation drills and plans at the beginning of the school year, and some of the different priorities that we'll have, training and onboarding our new staff with our updated EOP. And then we talked about the state of our facilities. We are in pretty good shape with having used our ESSER funds to update and remodel, and then our new building. We've got our new roofs, and we're doing pretty good facilities-wise. And Mr. Riddle gave a presentation on the updates to the rental houses. So we are doing pretty good. Is there anything specifically that you guys want to add on those?
At some point, we will need to add an actual action item for the girls wrestling.
Correct,
So whether-
on the
Whether we wait
next
till we have the
agenda.
other one, but we will need to make sure.
Right.
I was gonna say, do we have to do that in order if we're doing a certain order, if we're doing baseball or?
No, because either way, we can add the girls wrestling.
Right, but if we decide to do baseball, then do we have to come back, add something else if we already did girls wrestling?
Because of proportionality. It's kind of a weird way how it works. But so on I already made notes from our committee meetings that I'll have those items on our next agenda for girls wrestling. And then we'll do an update on boys baseball from the information we've gotten. And so we will work on that. We've got to get our shot clock going in the gym for basketball, as Mr. Odell stated. And those will be on the upcoming agenda. We do also plan to continue the conversation on safety around the school fence. So we're going to get proposals on increasing our bids and on increasing the height of our playground fence, as well as different structures or models for the playground fence, whether that was to be partial wall or increasing the fence height. And different ideas for that. We'll get bids and come back to the table. We also talked about potentially moving the basketball hoops so that they don't face towards the street, so that the balls can stay in the playground to help with that part of the issue. So those were the highlights of our conversations from our committee meetings. Anything else? Okay.
Okay, transitional kindergarten program information.
All right, so I will turn it over to Mrs. Hartman. We've been talking, as you know, about the number of kindergartners we're going to have and what our incoming kindergartners look like. And we had a lot close to the birthday cusp for some of those different things. And it's been hard with the transition since COVID and preschools had been closed for a while and things like that. We saw it in our first grade and kindergartners struggling a little bit the last couple of years. So we thought about potentially doing a transitional kindergarten where those kids would have an opportunity to have essentially 2 years of kindergarten if we had enough families that were interested in that. So I'll turn it over to you to give some further information.
And I've asked a couple of kindergarten teachers to be here so we can chime in as well. So originally this was being called like a 4K. The struggle with that is I had a lot of families reach out wanting 4-year-olds to be part of it. And right now with the 71 kindergartners, it's just not feasible to have 4-year-olds in it. So I asked Susie to change it to transitional kindergarten. I kind of looked at some other ideas on it and that felt like a better fit for it. And essentially it is a connection between preschool and kindergarten. So it gives students that extra year. And I know we've had a number of students over the years that have started kindergarten and then either have gone to half days or done a second year of it, or some that felt like they really could use a second year, but then you have parents that are concerned with their child not going on with their friends. And so this would, address that issue where they're with their friends then with a year, maybe a regular school day. It would just be a little bit less seat time, more of the social, maybe a nap in there. I don't know. We'll see what that looks like. But give those students more of that transitional piece to get them ready for kindergarten. And right now, we would have to address this would be for students who would be 5 by September 10th, the cutoff date. And then if our numbers are lower than what we've essentially got right now, then we could look at what we could do for some incoming 4-year-olds. But right now, with 71 kindergartners and 4 teachers, we're going to get 16, I think, per class right now, 17. Yeah, so we're getting up there when the cap's 20 and we've got 4 teachers. So, and I don't know who else we're going to see. So is there anything else you guys can add to that on your thoughts on transitional?
I just think in our community, there's a huge need for something coming into kindergarten. It's a pay base for most of those families, and we just have a high need of families who can't afford to pay for it. And so they don't have that opportunity to in education or sit and follow rules coming in. And so that's a huge part for me. And I've heard that from a lot of families that I've talked to. They can't afford to send them to preschool.
And there isn't many preschools in our community either, so.
And the daycare issue is huge. We had another 3 close this year. And so families feel like they have to get them here so they can work. And so there's so many issues playing into their decision to send them to school, where that would be another option for them. That would give them a good educational start, I think.
So I think the idea and the concept is great. My one concern is we keep getting these big kindergarten classes. So now if we have this group of kids that goes through this and we try and hold them or do a second year, if I understand it, what happens if we still have this great big influx? I mean, pretty soon we'd be looking at even, 6 kindergarten teachers potentially? I mean, that's my only concern when I look at this from a.
And I think that's what they're trying to point out is that we have people that are sending their kids because they have no other options right now. And so is this every year, are we going to see a group of kids that would qualify for that transitional kindergarten and then have 3 kindergarten classrooms? So, you could still, no matter what, have that one room. And each year, I think it'd be just a matter of looking at it and addressing it each year. Right now, I've made phone calls to a number of parents, but I'm getting a lot of questions that I'm unable to answer, as I wasn't part of all the kindergarten roundup. So I've reached out to the kindergarten teachers, and I would like to have a transitional kindergarten meeting on the 24th. And if that's okay with that, then we'll have Infinite Campus send out information to all of those parents that are interested in kindergarten next year, so that they can get the information of what transformational or transitional kindergarten would be and what would best benefit their child. And then we can look at those. If there's enough numbers, if there's only 5 people interested in it, then we won't be able to do it. If there's 16 into it, 15 or 16, then we can. But I think it's got to be something that the parents understand what is the goals behind it, and where their students themselves sit with kindergarten teachers can sit and visit with them more about. But then we can each year look at it. But I really think unless something changes with preschools and daycare here, which I know, we're in a group right now trying, and it's very difficult to do right now. But I think there's going to be, every year we've had kids that have been 2 years, every year.
So just so I'm clear, if it's all right, Mr. Chair, to ask.
Yes.
You're talking about having one separate class for just transitional kids.
Correct.
The other 3 would be
Kindergarten.
regular kids,
Correct.
so they're not blending, right?
Correct.
So you're not holding back.
Correct. Yeah,
So
because
you
the
have-
transitional is for those kids who, you have a lot of parents that are like, my kid's of age, but I just don't know if they're quite ready yet. But I can't afford to put them in preschool, so I'm going to put them in kindergarten no matter what. And so this would give them, and instead of us seeing kids being moved on because they want to keep them with their friends, now they've got a class that they're with, and they're getting those social skills, getting that time to learn how to sit. Because it would be less seat time, just more of that, learning time.
So you need at least 16 students,
About
17
About
students
16, yeah, 15, 16.
that are willing to do that. And you probably have some in mind currently that could fill that.
Correct. I have had a number of people that already said yes, but there's people that have had so many questions that I'm unable to answer. That's why I've asked to have a meeting that then we can just give everyone that information and speak with them.
So what happens if you get 10 families? Don't do it?
That's what we have to kind of look at our numbers and see. We have to look at those
So it's
numbers.
basically a full class or not at all?
Yeah, even if it was 14, and the regular kindergarten classrooms would maybe then be a little bit larger, but those students need more intervention, I guess, is how I think of it. So I think it'd be appropriate for that group to be smaller, and while still making sure that the other classrooms didn't get too big. I think important things to consider is we would use the early childhood standards, so rather than the kindergarten standards, so they'd be learning more of the basic fundamentals, right? And so it'd be a separate curriculum, so they would still be expected to move as that core cohort then into kindergarten. The only issues I saw when we did it in Livingston was if they then thought they would skip kindergarten because they learned their letters and all of that. It's like, no, they still need to, because that's based on the early childhood standards, then they do still need to go to kindergarten. So they would move as a cohort then into kindergarten. I think that offering, if we wanted to open up, and I've seen other districts, we've done it to increase enrollment or get that A and B if the board chooses to open it up to add a few 4-year-olds, if there's only 10, say, and we're not over in the other classrooms, or we can still keep the numbers under 18. In the other kindergarten classrooms, we could accept some 4-year-olds, and there's different ways to do that, like first come, first serve, or based on that income level. There's been quite a bit of talk about it in the community. I've had a lot of parents come up to me at the grocery stores or even come to the office and say, we've heard about this. I would absolutely love that for my child. So I think there's quite a bit of interest. We had quite a few, and that's part of the data we get out of the kindergarten roundup. We have quite a few that have their birthdays right on the edge, and the parents are only sending them because there's not a preschool opening or a daycare opportunity, and some of them even work at the school. And then
Is it for 4-year or 4.5-year-old, or what's the age cutoff again?
Right now, they'd have to be 5 by September 10th, the same.
Oh, it's 5.
Yeah, the September 10th. And this is because, I mean, I have a grandson whose birthday was in like June. There's no way he was gonna make it a year of kindergarten, so they waited a year. And you see a lot of kids that need to have that extra year.
But
And that's
this
what
one
give
would
them.
be for those.
Yeah, those kids that just need that extra year, yeah.
And then if we decided to open up any 4-year-old spots, it would come before the board. You guys actually have to vote them each and agree to each of them.
And you can look at parameters on that later if we don't have enough kids.
But right now, we think we'll have enough
Right now, we'll have.
regular aged kindergarten students, but it would just be an extra support for them.
And I guess to address your question, Jason, or your concern is, I guess, right now we have people that are doing 2 years too. So we're gonna still have that same number, I guess, but if you kind of look at it in that sense.
Because they've chosen themselves to do.
Correct.
So one question I guess I have on this is, right now, I was one of those parents at one point in time choosing, making this decision. For those parents that at this point, not knowing this is coming, have chose to hold their kids, or not hold, but hold their kids back, not bring them in, this becomes an option. Is there a concern that now those families are going to come back and go, oh, well, this would work for us. Now we just threw 9 more kids into the system and we're over state capacity. Is that
Could be.
possible?
Could be.
I think though,
We kept their names in
we
the
kept their
list.
names and we've talked to them about this possibly being an option. So they're aware of it.
So the 71 students include those kids. We kept their name on the list that they came
I
through
think-
Roundup.
Are you talking about, because I think he's talking about the kids that may not even show up to Roundup, that people might be on the community still, right? Is that what you're thinking?
We're not going to put our kids, we're not going to
Yeah.
bother going.
I think that's what
we're
I think
gonna-
he's addressing.
Like, is this ones that haven't, that's just a concern I can see. It's not whether this is a good thing or a bad thing, but does implementing
create
this
another
change?
surge.
Yeah.
Well, I think maybe some of those families have already made plans to take that route, so maybe it wouldn't be a huge issue.
It's very likely.
And I don't know, that's why, having that meeting on the 24th and getting people involved in it to understand it better, that would give us more direction. Because right now I can't get answers to even finalize and say, yeah, we need to go this route.
So you need from us?
It's just more of
It's
an
just-
informative and, yeah.
We just wanted to have the conversation and
Because there's thoughts, processes that come out of very helpful.
So you haven't advertised that?
No, I was waiting until after tonight. So, and I've talked to the kindergarten teachers and they're willing to be there and answer those questions. And we'll have it sent out through Infinite Campus, and then we'll get it posted in case there are members that haven't proceeded with the roundup.
Any transportation concerns as far as busing and issues on buses with additional students?
I'm not part of the transportation team.
No, there's not.
It shouldn't. Because, we talked about the bus capacity and the buses still have.
I think the only concern we have with buses right now is when we do field trips, one bus doesn't carry them all anymore.
And it's good to hear you're setting you're keeping the same standards too. I was under the impression it was going to be exceptions for 4-year-olds and then some 3-year-olds, just based off of the MTSBA policies that are there. You can
Yeah, and I
create
think,
those under 5-year-old exceptions.
right, and I think that was what was confusing about the 4K, that's why I'm like, let's get that out, because a lot of people were confused by that and call it transitional kindergarten.
Well, and there was that point where we had just a few too many kindergartners for 3, so then we had to add the 4th teacher. Well, now do we need to look at ways to fill that 4th, but that problem is taken care of. So.
No, we don't-
Yeah, that was
we don't
my-
have that problem.
That was my thought. I mean, we've utilized that in other districts I've worked in to try to balance the A and B by opening X amount of spots for 4-year-olds. And also if there's not a preschool in the community, it solves some of those challenges in communities I've been in.
Last time I checked, we had 71, so who knows what that is. I don't know.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, ladies.
Mr. Schindel, now it's your turn.
Now it's my turn. Oh boy, here we go.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, ladies.
Okay, last month I brought up that we probably need to see if we can upgrade a bus to get more seats on it, so I got some information on propane bus to go over with you guys tonight. And some information on how they're working, and got some prices from the propane companies here in town. They can fuel it here. And if we had to fuel elsewhere, we would have to do some checking to make sure we could do it. I'm not sure if you guys got this one yet. This is the Vision Propane.
I put some of the information in your packet, but not quite all of it that Ed had because he brought a lot to the office. So it is in your packet.
Yeah, you probably got that, right? So anyway, I would like to see us go to propane if possible for the Clean Air Act. It's going to come eventually. If we get started with something like this, I think it would be a good time to get started with it. On that Roush Clean Tech sheet, the first one I handed out, it has some comparisons on diesel, gas, electric, and propane. I'm not sure what year this was, but
Current prices.
yeah, the prices are pretty well out. They did a 15-year test. They ran every bus 15,000 miles and figured out the average fuel mileage and gallons used per bus, and the cost and stuff was on there. The price is now for propane. I checked with Madison. They've got it at $2.50 a gallon right now. And with gasoline price at $3.75 a gallon for regular and $4.15 for diesel right now. I checked with Rocky. They can use their station as a fill site too. And their price was $3.29 for propane. So the market is quite spread there. But I think everything, this bus is using a Ford 7.3 liter engine, for the propane, and it's the same one they use for gasoline too, so. We do need to upgrade. The 2 buses that I would like to get rid of are the most dependable buses we have, but they're the oldest and they're just too small. We have 40 seats in the blue bus, Peely, and we have, I think we can carry, I think it's 60 on the old yellow bus with the seats that are in there, if you put 3 kids to a seat. That's not big enough. Especially when I have 71 count. So that's why I was kind of looking, I got the information on 71 passenger. It's just a rough idea to get you guys thinking about it. And with the information you can go over on the propane stuff. But up at the conference, they were talking about electric buses. And there are a few schools that actually got some of the electric buses. There was grants available, so they really didn't have to pay anything. The grants bought the buses for them, but they're only good for 100 miles. So they're only good for routes. Because that way you can go out in the morning, get your route done, come back, plug it in, go out in the afternoon, get the route done, and then plug it in overnight to get a full charge. But this propane would be the clean fuel, and 71 passenger would make it the biggest bus we have, so.
There's no grants for the propane ones?
Hmm?
There's no grants for the propane ones?
There might be, I mean, we can check into it and see.
I believe DEQ Clean Diesel has a grant right now. Their DEQ Clean Diesel grant program, and it applies to the clean diesel version, the propane and electric. And that's where the schools are getting basically all paid for electric
Right.
vehicles. So
Yeah.
I learned that from
The
the East Ellis school.
DEQ, and they had that Volkswagen grant
Yeah.
for a lot of the electric ones.
Lion Electric is looking into it now too.
Yeah.
But there is, East Ellis School Board told me that there is money available for the grant program for propane buses as well, just not as much.
Right.
But there's some
Yeah,
grant,
it helps.
yeah, there's some grant money there.
So if you guys are interested, read that stuff over, let me know. I can continue doing research to see what I can come up with, do some comparison with diesel buses or gas buses too, whatever. This was just some that I contacted up there at the conference that were sitting there. So I wanted to get some information.
So looking bigger picture and the other buses, the activity buses, and just, I guess, knowing that the pot of money is only so big and we gotta spread it around. When you look at the other activity buses, where's our biggest concern, or where do you expect us to need the next replacement to have to come in?
The next replacement, I think, will have to be bus 5, the Van Pool. We'll find out more when I get it over to get it serviced. I have to take it to Missoula. They're the ones that even look at them. So bus 2 is over there right now, getting worked on, and I haven't heard anything if they found anything bad on it yet or not. But bus 5, the front end is starting to show a little wear. So not sure what we're gonna have there when we get that. So but that's what I've heard from the mechanics that looked at it so far.
Ed, am I correct that whether we're looking at the propane or the gas version of these yellow buses, 71 passengers, which you're mainly wanting to use for field trips, so we could take a whole grade level like we were talking about, run from about 120 to 140,000?
Yeah.
Okay.
That may be basic, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I've got a sheet that we can fill out with options.
Yeah.
But anything that's new now has to have the seat belts, so they'll be on there. And if it's a yellow bus, it's gonna have that extended stop arm too, for sure.
What about the coach buses? What do they cost to start off? Like or would we look at new or used?
We'd have to go used on those. The new ones are like 400 and some thousand.
And that's about what we have in our budget for transportation, the bus depreciation. I put it in here, I think, we had like 390 or something like that.
And our two most reliable buses, the older ones, on average, what would you say annual maintenance costs are on those to keep it going?
Basically, oil change and fuel. We haven't had anything done for them forever, since I started doing stuff.
What about coaches?
Coaches, I'm not sure on the cost. We have had quite a bit of stuff done with them.
Is there a way we could get that cost of the coaches? And I'm curious if they have bus leasing programs. Do you know if they do that?
I believe some of the companies do lease.
Jeremy?
I can answer that. You guys are established. Most companies want at least a 5-year record to do a leasing program. I looked into that when I first started taking over. So like the one that we got, the Freightliner, the National Bus Sales, they'll do a leasing program if you show the 5 years established as a business. School district, I'm sure they'd let you do that, but I don't know if they do it on a coach bus, they'll do it on school buses. It's a leasing revolving 3 or 4 year program.
Okay, awesome, thank you.
Pretty sure National said they do that
Yes.
leasing program.
And
And that's the one that we got the Freightliner.
Yeah. And if you're looking used, coach buses now used, you can get a really decent one for about 100,000. I know I've looked at a few. The one that I just purchased, I was able to get for 60. It's a 2004 MCI. It's been completely gone through from the company I got it from. So if you're looking that route, the used buses are about that pricing. So, and it's again 57 passengers like the ones we have. So.
Thank you for that.
If we went propane direction, what does that do to you, I guess, or whoever continues the maintenance on them? Is it still something that's maintainable here, or is there more expertise that has to go somewhere special to be maintained?
I think the local truck dealers could work on those. They don't want to touch coach. I don't care what year it is. When I called Missoula to take coaches over there, they said, is there anything wrong with the engines? I says, not that I know of. He says, all right, we'll take them. But if they have to work on the engine, they don't even want them coming in their door. So, but yeah. J&D said they can service everything, but they don't want to touch the coaches. I'm sure Grizzly's the same way. I haven't been to Grizzly.
No, but I know locally here, the mechanic that I work with has offered to work with the coaches on mine anyways. TJ has. I mean, he is busy, but he has the equipment and ability to do that. So it just depends on what our buses need.
Sure.
And they don't, like Ed said, the maintenance is not a lot on the coach bus. You know, for what we use them for as a school, an oil change a year gets us by, you know, but they take 5, 6, 7 gallons of oil and a filter system, a multi-filter system. So the oil changes are expensive, but they're once a year. And then otherwise it's tires every 3, 4 years, I think it will be. So they're very inexpensive to run until you start, like the Van Hool, it's getting the age and the wear on it where nobody wants to mess with it. So, but otherwise maintenance on the coach buses it's not as easy as a school bus is, you know, with 16 quarts of oil, the filter change you have done half an hour. A coach bus, you've got to have some special equipment as low as they sit to be able to get in there and change your air systems and whatnot, so you can lift it up enough to access everything. So, but we have a pit too, so you know, some of that stuff's okay.
Just wish the pit was 4 feet longer.
Yeah.
Because I still have to crawl under it to get in there.
I was doing some other thinking on this earlier today, and talking to Susie, and it's my understanding currently that if there's, on our school buses, other than the smaller sped bus, if there's a student that requires a lift, they would have to take a separate vehicle right now. I'm wondering if there would be if it'd be worthwhile looking into maybe upgrading or looking at even a larger bus like the 83 passenger and looking into adding a lift to that. Because I know if we add a lift, we're going to lose seats.
Right.
But if we go with a little bit larger bus, then we can maybe afford to lose those seats and put a lift in there.
Yeah, I can look for whatever you guys want to.
I don't know if the rest of the board thinks it's worthwhile looking at that, but it just seemed like it's a possibility.
Yeah, it was really strange this year to have the sped bus because we never had it before.
Well, I think Jeremy can probably tell me too, and if there's supported too, is what kind of maintenance the sped bus and what timeline it has left in it. It spent a lot of time at the shop this year, so. And last minute things that, had to run a different vehicle because it just wasn't running.
This bus would be, the one you're proposing is more field trip type stuff rather than like sporting activities.
Right.
Correct.
It would be big enough that the sporting good or sports could use it too. We should have it fitted with air conditioning and that kind of stuff too, so it would. The yellow bus is still a safer road of transportation than a regular or a non-yellow bus. People look at that a little more. Most of them can't see yellow, but it is a little better. But so whatever's on there, you still gotta be careful.
Right.
But they do have bigger buses with handicap or special ed stuff too, like Daniel said, so.
And is there a safety consideration we need to be thinking about? Compressed gas, propane, do they have, what kind of security measures if a bus gets hit? Is it gonna explode?
The tank, no, the tank is mounted in the frame, so it's protected, it's in the middle of the bus. It's like everything else. You have gasoline. It's not like TV where every time they get wrecked, it's There are many wrecks where the whole body has been taken off with the train. There's never even a fire, so everything's safety.
Cold weather?
Propane worked really good.
20 below.
Yeah, the year will be awesome.
Still flows at -40, so if anybody's stupid enough to be out driving it. Yeah, you wouldn't have to worry about plugging it in and things like that. Like the diesel.
Wouldn't have to sit there and run all day at the
Right.
tournaments.
Chris, ours don't anyway. We're not like some other teams. So just some food for thought there. If you want to pursue, see what I come up with as far as what is available, and look at used, whatever
So that 120 to 140 is a new?
is new.
Yeah, but, yeah, just in getting a couple quotes too would be helpful.
Yeah.
I know there's one bid provided in the packet, but multiple bids is always helpful.
Yeah.
If you kind of go use one, I'm all about used too. As long as it's not too much work to maintain.
And if it's not too much work either, I'd like to see a little bit larger with a lift. Just
Okay, check on that too. Any other questions?
Thank you, Mr. Schindel.
Okay, moving on, consent action items, minutes and warrants.
I'll move to approve the minutes and warrants as presented.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes and warrants as presented. Is there any discussion? Discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passed. Action items, approve membership dues with MREA.
So MREA is Montana Rural Education Association. We have been a long time member. Most currently, they've been trying to help us advertise and recruit for our vacancies. And I put some information in your packet about the various opportunities that they provide, professional development, legal services. They lobby for rural schools during legislative session, and just wanted to enter into another year with them if that works for the board.
I will move to approve the renewal of the MREA membership for $2,170.
I'll second that.
Been moved and seconded to approve the renewal of the MREA membership for $2,170. Is there any discussion? Yes, I have one question. Do you know, past practice, are we using much of their additional services, or are there things that we should be considering using more?
I would say yes.
Okay.
So I even asked, so they just changed leadership. Dennis Parman was there forever and was always a really good resource to me, and I knew him personally. So I would just kind of informally reach out to him. But now there's a new executive director, Larry, and I think it would be great to have him come, even maybe introduce himself to you guys and talk about the services that he could offer so that everyone could take advantage of those. They did an awesome presentation at our school administrators workshop. Oh, I think you and Sherry and I were there last spring, something like that, about the recruitment initiatives that they're working on now that we're really struggling in that area across the states. So we are utilizing their help right now. They've been doing some Facebook ads and posting and things for us about our vacancies. I think the legal services, I'd be interested in learning more. MTSBA is always pretty helpful, and Bea is obviously very specialized. We usually use her for very particular things or special education law, but I'd be interested to see how they work for that. I do know that it is important to have their perspective as far as their support in a lot of times those at the table at the legislative session, have the AA districts in mind, and MREA reminds them, how important it is to think about us even just half an hour from Helena and how different things are for us in our community and our school before those things get put into law. So I've heard their testimony many times at the Capitol and know that they do a good job in that. So they do offer and partner on a lot of the conferences like IMSEL. And so if you guys participate in IMSEL, you'll be able to see them there and maybe see some of the sectionals that they help host. And there are different professional development opportunities that we've taken advantage of. So.
Yeah, I think it's important, for us to support those that support us, especially at the legislature. And I think they do a good job. I would like us to look into it, make sure that we are getting as much bang for our buck.
Mm-hmm.
If there's other services that we could utilize, I think that's important. But I do think they do advocate for, the smaller school, rural districts, especially during the legislature. And it's important that we have those people there. And so I think it is important that we do our part to support them.
Yeah, and Dennis Parman's on the letter here, and he introduces Larry Crowder, both excellent advocates for public school and rural schools. So they've been great to work with.
Are we seeing fruits from the recruitment? Are we seeing teachers?
We do have some interviews coming up, so that's going to be part of my report. I don't know specifically. That would be a good thing to ask them when we interview them.
And then also along the lobbying question, are they surveying you or are they surveying members on positions?
They do send out, and that is another thing I should mention, and sometimes I forward them on to you guys when I know specifically it might be interesting. But the executive director does send out informational, just like you guys get from MTSBA. They do send us great information weekly, and I can forward those on. Usually if there's something I think would interest you guys, I forward them on. They do provide a lot of just great information about what's going on in education or things we need to pay attention to or be aware of, which includes the surveying of us for any particular legislation, or they'll do like a call to action. Hey, this really impacts Class B and C districts. Make sure you have an eye on this and let us know. So if you can help participate or those kinds of things.
Okay, any discussion? Discussion, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, motion passed. Approved MTSBA ballot. So this is, MTSBA held their annual meeting in June. All of these changes to their policy, would have been voted by the membership at that meeting. Unfortunately, they didn't have a quorum at the meeting, and so they've had to send it out electronically. So basically, we as a district need to just, look through those things. Hopefully, everybody had a chance to read through it a little bit. Most of it reflects changes that came about due to the legislature and changes in, current actions in education, relative to Montana. So as a board, we just need to agree or disagree on, submission of the ballot and whether we approve or disapprove of those. And then either myself or the district clerk can cast the ballot. It has to be done by the end of July. So that's why it's on tonight's meeting. I don't know, hopefully everybody had a chance to look through it, but I don't know if anybody has any specific questions. I don't know that I can answer in great detail, but, the dues estimate, calculation is, they're just showing us, how they come up with that formula. It's not specific to any one district, it's just showing everybody how they come up with that. As you go through there, you can see where changes, where their board of directors, made recommendations to their principles and guidelines. You can see what they had previous, what they crossed out, what they changed. I don't like to just think that we, blanketly accept everything, but, MTSBA does a great job of what they're doing and providing for school boards around the state. So obviously, I have not memorized it myself, but everything I've looked at, seems to reflect a positive change in what they do for us. So my recommendation is we approve and submit the ballot as such.
I make a motion that we approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the MTSBA ballot. Is there any discussion?
Just that their guidelines, ultimately the policy decision still lies with the board.
Discussion? Discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passed. Approve fifth day programming outline.
So in your packet, you'll see some information regarding, I took the students' names off of the parents that from the sign up that we did on the questionnaire. Just to give an idea of how many kids at each grade level would be potentially participating, and then results of the questionnaire that we sent out. So that could help inform your decision. Tonight, what I would like is your approval to move forward with fifth day programming. And we'll still need some more time to vet those details out. So I'll also turn it over to Ms. Hartman in a second to talk about how the 21st Century Grant can support that, what she learned from her conference regarding that. But at this point in time, in order for us to move forward, we need to know and start doing an actual registration and finding out if we're going to provide transportation where these kids live and all of those details. We can provide transportation if the 21st century budget allows. We're still looking into the foods and like the food questions on how we can provide food. There's a lot out there that we're working with the state on and going back and forth on, and it's been a group effort with Ms. Hartman and Pam and Casey and we have a lot of information we're still seeking, but that's what we would be asking for tonight, whether or not you guys would like to move forward with offering programming on that 5th day. And I'll turn it over to you for some added details.
So the conference, I spent 4 days up in Folsom, no late time, so put that out there. The conference was really informative. There were some great groups that came in there. It did answer a lot of questions, like we can pay for transportation out of the 21st century. So with that 5th day, so because it's not something we already currently do. The food part of it, there's been a lot of questioning back and forth as far as like the labor part of it. To prepare the food is okay, but the actual food is where the question comes in, because the school gets reimbursed, but the school only gets reimbursed for a regular school day. So there's some questions on that. I've got phone calls out to different groups out there to see other schools, how they're doing it, as well as there's some other entities that might be able to assist with that part of it. The one way we can pay for food is have the students prepare it themselves if it's turned into an educational moment. So it could be paid for in that sense every time, as long as it was made educational. We do have to do a K-12 program because we are a K-12 district. And so that was some of the things that the speakers that they brought in some great pieces on how to do that. Because right now, essentially, our program is care for students who need it till about 6 o'clock at night. There is some homework and tutoring time, physical time, because they do have their outlines of what I have to do after school program now. But with the 21st century, we can really expand that program. One of the things that I thought was really cool that they're doing with their older kids is they're doing esports. And the things that brought in, and they're actually making the kids, like, they have to keep grades a certain level. Just like as if they were in a regular sport, they follow the exact same standards. They had to be in good standing. They paid a small fee so they get their shirts and stuff. But this program could pay for that, because we don't have anything like that. And, these are all of the goals that we have to have for 21st century. And part of it is their GPA and improve attendance and things like that. And the one district, the school that came in, they're from Madras, Oregon. And I don't know if you know Madras, but it's on a reservation. It's a lower income area. And what this did for their kids was phenomenal on those older kids. And talking with him, they've got a full-on program that is every day now, but you could easily start it where it's one night a week or something to get it rolling and see how it does from there. But and you could do that. That's more of a middle and high school program, and that's where the younger kids there's a lot you can do. With older kids is where, how are you going to entice them? What can we do to expand their academic part of it? And that's one of those goals as well. The other one is drones. That was the other one that was brought in, and how kids can get their license at the age of 16, and what they're trying to do with some of that, so that they're talking about like 2025, there's not even enough airline pilots. So some of those things that for those older kids as well. And granted, there's lots of other things for the younger kids and a lot of stuff with the program itself on how you can do certain things and everything. But some of those older kids ones was where I attended more, because I wanted to see more of what was out there. And it got my brain going immediately. So I just think these are things that we don't currently do, and these are things that this grant can allow us to do. And I know Mr. Gill would probably be really all about the drones, maybe the esports too, I'm not sure.
The esports thing I've actually been looking at myself for quite a while with Mrs. Everin in bringing in a program for the high school and potentially middle school.
but it's been something that's been backburnered simply because there hasn't been enough movement from MTSBA or MTA to the High School Sports Association to bring it on at a state level. And because it's not on a state level, the schools we've kind of taken a back burner for the last couple of years, looking at it, potentially bringing it to the board. But it's something that I've been kind of working on behind the scenes, kind of getting ready for, knowing that eventually it's going to happen, and it's something that I'd like to see happen here at the school. I've got an extensive amount of information about a program that's statewide that would be a fantastic thing to bring to the district. And I would love to have the opportunity to visit with the board, especially if there's no potential for funding for some of that stuff through the after-school program.
Yeah, and so there's some great opportunities this can really bring to our kids. This is just some of them for the older kids, but with the younger kids, I really think focusing on having a theme night and rotations where they can get more exposure. They had groups there from like the forestry, trying to get kids more involved in that. So they had all kinds of ways that you can expand on that. And these are things that we're not doing right now. So these are things that we can just really expand our program. Give them a lot more tools like the Whammo car I got to drive in Arizona that we don't know about here, right? So it was a self-driving car in Arizona. I got to ride in this thing. It was pretty cool.
Scary.
It was cool. So, but yeah, so then, and obviously, and there's part of it more too, family engagement is a big part of it, and getting those parents involved. And, that's another area that we're just not able to do right now. We've got one night in the elementary, but this could really take, especially that 5th day, and expand more of a family engagement piece and get families involved more of, maybe they're need to understand math on a different basis, more of a hands-on concept.
I really appreciate your energy. I'm all fired up just listening to your insight, so thank you. I'm getting a lot of questions, and they're all the same regarding the 21st Century Grant. Are there any strings out there we got to be aware of, or is this no other requirements that are going to come by us down the road? Or
the one biggest thing is they do want you to work on how to sustain things, right? And that comes with every grant. How are you going to sustain it? You can apply for it again, and it's a 5-year grant. And so that was written that way of how we're going to sustain it already. The only thing we're struggling with right now is, and I assume we're going to table the next part, because as far as if I can be hired or not as a director is one of the things that is being questioned because of my title. So that's the only thing. And it bums me out. It breaks my heart because I do have all these things I think would be really cool. But I think if we had to, I'm sure we can find someone who could take that same time. But as far as others, I'm not seeing anything. There's just a lot of time involved in it, a lot. There's a lot of data that has to be collected. You have to work with the school closely, which is why I felt would also benefit with being connected with me, because I do all of our Title I, I'm our Title I director, so I have access to all of our data. And so I can see what kids are needing, where they're struggling, what we need to, what can we do to address those concerns. I know attendance, I know that's always been a concern. We need more engagement. What do we need to do there to get those kids there? And, esports was one of them that just really, I thought, jumped out. Like, just one idea, but I don't see, unless it's just a sustainability part of it that's later down the road, but we can apply again.
I would just add that my experience with the 21st Century Grant, like Mrs. Hartman said, is the data collection. We're required to maintain accurate attendance records and those kinds of, detailed records, and maintain the budget and account for the funds, of course. We need to work towards the goals that are outlined. I've seen some programs struggle with those because it does say that you have to have academic goals and academic focus of the program. So we do not just have a snack and play on the playground, those kinds of things. So there are guidelines and standards that the state sends a supervisor out, kind of basically to audit the program, usually annually. And those are the kinds of things they're looking for, the lesson plans, the attendance records, those kinds of things. So, and the whole child, making sure that you have a well-rounded activity. So you're doing physical things that are physical, academic, tutoring, social opportunities, family engagement requirement, those kinds of things. But as far as strings are attached, we're not giving up land or anything like that.
And they're not forcing any curriculum on us. We have full choice of our curriculum.
Correct. We just have to hit all those different areas.
Yeah, and that's the biggest part, like right now, the action plan, you have to create an action plan, what are your goals and everything. This is a timeline of all the data that has to be done. Every month there is something, some months are a little heavier than others. And so like right now, I leave again Saturday for another training for 21st. And then I've got a day that I have to be on with OPI just for the data piece of it. And then I've got 2 days in Bozeman for another piece of the training, just before I can even work on the action plan. And then the action plan is due by August 16th. So there's a lot of hours and paperwork involved in it. And I think that was our struggle before, is the paperwork just didn't get done, and that's why we lost it.
At this last training in Polson, obviously there was positive results of attendance to the program. I mean, they're seeing it being utilized.
And that's the biggest part of it, is what are you doing to, get that attendance? And those are those pieces of like esports or drones and, those family engagement pieces. Because they want, you're one of the things you have to see improved GPA, you have to see improved attendance. There's from those kids. Well, if you get them on esports with video games, and I'm not a gamer, but it still got me all excited about it. But if you have those stipulations that they're still having to follow the same guidelines as a sport, any kid attending sports, that they have to be in good standing, they have to have their attendance and things like that, of course you're gonna see that.
Okay.
And what kids not, there's a lot of kids that are into the gaming stuff, so.
But when you're talking attendance, you're looking at their regular
Correct.
school attendance, right?
Correct.
And their grades.
Correct. Everything is tied to the school. So you have to look at what the school is using for curriculum and what can we do to expand on that. So like in the elementary, our math scores are really high, okay? We're one of those odd schools that we have really good high math scores. So what can we do now to extend that? What extensions can we go from there? More of a hands-on personalized learning program, I guess, would be something that kids are applying what they're learning, right? Real life versus what they're just doing in the classroom, but could be an extension. Reading, our scores are still low, but we just got a new reading program. So what can we do? There are components of our reading program that we could take and expand into the after-school program to give kids more pieces of it, to give them chances of raising their scores. But everything is tied to the school and what they're doing.
It's, like I understood you right, it's all or nothing, right? Fifth day programming is K-12 or not at all?
It's K-12.
And then what about students who don't attend here regularly, wanting to attend the fifth day? Is that optional?
You mean as far as like homeschool students? I don't know, that's a good question. That is definitely a good question.
As you start to explore those other things, if
Yeah.
other students could.
I could definitely, didn't even cross my mind on something like that. I could definitely look into that.
And then the other question I had is, well, two. One is like, how many student-teacher ratio would you need to make it go? I mean, if you're hiring a director and potentially multiple staff, is there like an optimum?
Everything I have done so far, I try to do a 1:15 ratio. And I think more depends on what you're doing.
Okay. So you think you'll have enough students, K-12, hopefully, that you would have enough interest?
Yeah.
Because I know some of the other schools that have started that fifth day discussion, right? If we expect 60, and by Christmas break, we got 30. And now we're struggling to keep interest. And so then what do you do with people you hired?
Correct. And I guess that's where I think I come back to what are we doing? If we're doing things like drones, how many more kids are we gonna get that normally wouldn't be there? And maybe drones are the second Friday, or second, fifth day of the month, maybe it's not every fifth day or something, but to get started, well, if we see a huge influx on that day, then we know that's something that these kids are interested in. Same with esports. So, I mean, I think it's more about what are you doing? If they show up and they think they're gonna have to sit at a desk and do paperwork, they're not gonna be there, right? So it needs to be more hands-on engagement piece.
Is there a 6-month or a 3-month adjustment that has to be made throughout the process? So if you have more students, you gotta hire more staff to the grant bill. Does that allow for that? Or
Yeah, because
less
I can
students,
go and amend
You
things.
can.
Because right now I have to amend the entire thing. Because I did not write it for fifth day services.
Gotcha.
And
So
then
no-
we were talking about, talking to our neighboring districts and how they managed that. They said that parents had to sign up for that, like if it was for that Friday by Tuesday or Wednesday, so that you would know how many staff. And then the way the after school or Friday staffing goes is kind of a pool of folks that we have that are interested, and it's not like the same person every day or that kind of thing. So
Your site coordinator would be the same person, but other than that. it's
yeah.
different.
Otherwise, so that'd be the main person. So then otherwise you'd look from there and be like, and sometimes Ms. Hartman will even send out an email to staff, because a lot of our staff are some of the folks that help with that. Hey, we need another person for after school these 2 days this week, or that kind of thing. And even like from the sub pool, we can pull people for staffing, depending on how that's going to fluctuate. So
What would be the minimum number of students you would need to have in a week to run a bus service efficiently? I mean, it seems like if you're
Well,
like a bus 5 kids or 10 kids on a Friday, it's not really worth it.
Yeah, the transportation would only be on the fifth day. It
Right,
wouldn't
that's
be
what I'm
on-
asking.
okay,
So
yeah.
what would be, what's our break even where it becomes cost prohibitive to doing it?
I think that the bus transportation is a contracted dollar amount, so I don't know that really matters, right?
it's a little bit more in depth than that,
Fifth
but
day is totally separate from the
Okay.
contract we have now.
yeah, I guess that would be up to, I mean, the board to decide, do we need to set a number? Out of the kids that the families so far that took the time to fill out the questionnaire, half of them said they would attend regular and half of them said only occasionally. And then only half of them said that they would be interested in
15
transportation,
students based
so.
off of the current response, so we need transportation
And could come from pretty
all over the county.
diverse, yeah.
So when we talked with Jeremy today with Bulldog Bus Lines, we talked about those major stops, like maybe Toston, the Silos, Confederate, and just, those major stops, and seeing who we gather. And that would be part of it, is if you guys approve it, we'll open up an actual registration. Would you like bus services, and where do you live? So then we could get an idea of what that route would look like. So,
One quick question I had, and I'm hoping I'm just not the only person in this room that has this question, but I'll ask Joe if it's okay. If you had 15 seconds to explain to me what esports is. Apparently it's not in my
Video
world.
games.
Video games.
Okay, like sport type.
Yeah, so there's literally like 5 or 6 main games that they play. And they're all team driven, they're all team sports. The sports that are on the high school approved list for the league that I was looking into are all very, well, some of them are more team oriented, that do have some violence, video game violence in them, but they're not the first person shooters. Most of them are much more scaled back. There's a game called Rocket League that's big with younger kids, that's basically like a simulated soccer game that you use race car, like RC car, you're an RC car basically kicking a soccer ball around. And every one of the esports games that I've looked into have all been, like I said, very team oriented. The program that I was looking at for the high school at least is very academic driven, in the fact that, like Mrs. Hartman already mentioned, these kids have to be up in good standings in order to participate. And then they have to be good team players. If they're not good team players, they can't be on the team. I mean, you treat it just like any other organized sport.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I don't play these games myself, so I can't delve into a lot of detail on what's involved with them. My interest came from it because there are college scholarships in state for esports, and they're big college scholarships. And there's college scholarships elsewhere through other universities. In fact, I have a cousin whose kid that's how he went through college, was through esports scholarships. So they're there, they're real.
Scholarships for it.
And it's huge. It's a huge industry.
And it's getting bigger. They said it's gonna go, the next couple of years, it's gonna get bigger.
My only apprehension for a Friday program that's esports based is I think you're gonna really struggle still to get high school kids there for Fridays for esports. You're gonna struggle to get a coach myself on Fridays for esports. I'm just gonna be perfectly honest.
Well, thanks for explaining that a little bit more. Honestly, not my world.
And then, I mean, something like that, it doesn't have to be done on the 5th day, but it could be done on the 4 days after school. It's just, there's all kinds of options.
Do you have some teachers that are interested in coming on as tutors, or are these going to be student tutors for?
I think it's big, the biggest part of it would be the pay scale. If they're, the pay with the grant and stuff, we keep the pay at a nice rate. And so as long as they're paid at a decent rate, I think some teachers come on for tutoring, because I think that's really important that we have them on.
So what you need from us then? Well, basically, we need to, basically an approval for them to continue to work on this at this point. If we're opposed to it, then they need to stop doing what they're doing. But there's still obviously a lot of questions that got to get answered. And I guess I'm going to go back to, what I said clear back at the original 4-day meeting is, going to a 4-day school week cannot cost us more money than it did to operate a 5-day school week. So the 5th-day programming, if the 21st Century Grant covers everything, that's great. If it doesn't, and we have areas that we have to come up with other money for, that presents a problem. So as long as we can get those answers, that everything that we're talking about, which all sounds wonderful and great, but we have to be assured that we can take that money from the 21st Century Grant, because there is literally no money elsewhere to get it. My second concern is the sustainability. We have this grant for 5 years, we get all this up and running, there's always the possibility we won't have the grant. So you can't answer that question today, you probably can't answer that question on the 5th year. It's just something we have to know and
Year we'll get the
understand.
grant again, we'll have an answer for you.
Year 4, we won't know the answer yet. But that is my concern with, moving forward with 5th-day programming, is we have to know that everything can be covered from the 21st century.
And right now, everything can be covered. The only thing is the food. But there's ways around that, is whether we have them make their own lunch or if we have them bring their own lunch.
The other thing I'd emphasize is that if we do proceed, keep looking into this, that it's communicated that this is still tentative, meaning it's not decided, that the public, when they're signing up for registration, when they're telling you where they live, that the decision's still not been made. That's what's gonna happen, right?
Well, I guess that's what I'm asking for tonight, is that if
But
we're
we don't
gonna
have
move
that
forward with the
information to
program
make
yet
that
or not.
decision, right? To Jason's point, there's a lot of unanswered questions with dollars and other things.
Well, I don't know unless we have your approval. I mean, I guess what I'm just asking is if it, at no cost to the district, are you approving us to operate a program on Fridays? Because I need that to move forward.
That would move forward with this program.
Yeah, because we can't amend anything until I know you guys are willing to go forward. So I can't do anything more with the funding part of it.
I'll second that.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded to approve an outline for 5th-day programming under the guise that it costs the money to cost the district no additional money beyond what the 21st Century Grant will supply. Got all that?
Yeah. Yes, I think I might rewrite it a little bit, but
Yes,
yeah.
you can, my words definitely don't. You gotta remember who you're talking to.
Thank you. I really think it would be a.
Is there any discussion? Any
Sounds
further
great.
discussion?
I just have concerns over longevity, even an annual process, right? That you hire staff and expect, the first 3 months, 4 months to go great, and then staff are out of jobs and out of hours, and
And I guess I think we need, as you work on this, we need to probably set some metrics. Are we having enough students? Is there consistency there? And then looking at, as the year goes on, looking at those things that you, I guess, technically have to collect the data on.
And I'd say there's lots of data, so you'll be able to see.
Yeah.
Are we making improvement? Are we, because what I don't want, and I said back then, is I don't want to just run a daycare. That's not what we're trying to do. If we are improving educational output, educational performance, then I'm all for it.
And I don't want to run a daycare either. I run a daycare if I want, if that's what I wanted. So with the goals and stuff, those are the things, giving high school kids opportunities for career exploration, things like that. There's so many things that we can do with it that they're not getting now. So I think it'll be really beneficial.
Discussion.
just the same with transportation costs. I mean, if you're busing 5 kids around the district, it's not hardly worth the expense, but.
Yeah, we kind of have to find out what the need is,
It's an unknown
yeah.
at this point. It's just a realization that, you've got.
We need to, just through your registration process, I guess, ask those questions.
Oh, yeah.
Do you need it if we pick you up here?
10 miles from home, 15
Right.
miles from home.
What is the
5 miles from
cut
home.
off?
I'm a half class positive person, so if we have a program, they'll want to be here.
Discussion. Discussion. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passed. Okay, so the next item was to talk about, how do we compensate Christina for her time in doing this? But again, that money has to somehow come through that grant, and that's what she learned, that as a principal, is that what it, because you're the principal, you can't be the.
Not necessarily the principal, they have to look at how my contracts are written, and I'm trying to get them to understand that I follow the certified CBA, and so my fifth day is separate from my contract, so I should be able to be under the 21st, and that's what I have to get cleared up with them, is to make sure, and currently I have never been paid through the school year for the after-school program. The stipend I do receive is only for summer, and so trying to get them to understand as well that I've never been paid for that, so that I can be paid for those after-school hours as well.
And for all these trainings she's been going to, obviously above and beyond her regular hours on the weekends and things. So I just wanted to make sure that we kept that in mind. And when we figure out the right way to do it, we're ready to compensate her for that work.
So we will just table this or pass consideration on it for now.
Okay.
Because I've pretty much given up my summer.
Right, and that's what I request that, you document for us those hours, so that when we have this answer, we have a pretty solid understanding of the time that was donated at that point.
Subtract the lake time.
Yeah.
I had no wait time, 0. They had us there from 8 to 5, and even during lunch, we had presenters. There's none.
Okay, therefore, moving on, approved hourly payment to Gemma Lockery for CTE concentrator aim data entry.
So Miss Lockery spent about 12 hours. She'll have a time card to turn into Casey, but she's did about 12 additional hours that I'm asking we pay at her hourly rate anytime we do something like that above and beyond the normal, bring it before the board. This is CTE concentrator data entry. It's really complex and based off of each student's transcript. And it would take me over a week, I would say, to try to figure it out. So the CTE teachers, however, know their kids really well and which ones are earning concentrator to be added to their transcript. And so she's able, like I said, to get it done in about 12 hours. And so really appreciate her expertise, and the other teachers, were happy to let Miss Lockery fulfill that duty. So if I would just like to compensate her for her time to help with that data entry, that would be really time consuming. Some schools have an admin or a school counselor do it, but she has the most knowledge currently of those students and was able to do it in much less time.
What do the acronyms stand for?
So the career and technical education. So it's any of the kids taking like business class with Mr. Horn, the FFA type classes, the ag ed, Clint's woodworking, our Skills USA classes. So they earn particular credit for those kind of classes, and then they earn what's called a CTE concentrator that the state needs us to record on their transcripts. And in our AIM, our data entry system that goes to the state. So it's a requirement. We had to meet a deadline. Like I said, it would have been very time consuming for me to try to figure out where she knew like this, which kids had earned their concentratorship. So last year she did this, was willing to help me do this. And I learned very quickly that she was capable and able to do it much better than myself. So she stepped up to do it again this year, and I'd just like to compensate her for that.
I move to pay Gemma for the work that she can do.
Second.
It's moved and seconded to approve Gemma Lockery to be paid her hourly rate for the reporting and data entry completed. Is there any discussion? Discussion, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion passed. Approve the bus routes for 2023, 2024.
Okay, so there were bus routes in your packet, but there was just a couple that from the transportation committee meeting that were recommended for the board's approval. However, we had just a couple slight changes that Jeremy brought with Bulldog Bus Lines to make sure the times were correct for our new school day. And then the main changes we had from the routes from last year, Jeremy, were...
So on route number 2, Canyon Prairie Highway 284, after we pulled out of the highway, we went all the way up to Diamond Gulch on the highway for one student and turned around and came back down. So I removed that since we already have Diamond Gulch, or was approved to be removed. Since we already have a Diamond Gulch stop on route number 3. So that will be the Diamond Gulch for there. And route number 2 then will reduce that stop. And it was also a private driveway that we were pulling off of for years past to make that turnaround. So it saves the county to have to maintain a private driveway as well, turnaround. And then the second biggest thing we did is that number 5 is the Townsend route. However, these are the north side of that route, which is up on Lakeview and Lope Valley. Valley Drive is also a pull-in backup, pull in some more backup if you don't make it the right way, down private roadway access through a parking lot. It's not working anymore. It's too, safety is not there if you don't hit that right. So I just asked that the board approved, or the transportation committee approved, that that's a highway stop until we get something figured out where we can have a safe turnaround.
How many kids on that, Jeremy?
On that stop, there's roughly, anywhere from 11 to 14 on certain days. It's a big stop. And you have to turn way down the ditch to be able to make that and then stop and pick kids up. And then you got to back up a little bit because the bank of mailboxes and a fence. And then drive down on the, in the road that the private owners has maintained for us, and through the parking lot and back up. Any type of weather, it's very hard to get in there. that mud, as you slide down into the burrow pit for the state access, it's
So-
just,
so
it's not safe anymore.
Got it, totally. But we're talking about 11 to 14 families that are gonna have to go to the highway now, is that?
It's right, it's literally right there. I mean, you
Oh,
just
okay.
pull off, it's, yeah, they're standing right there anyways. We just have pulled off and driven, so
Oh,
they'll be able to walk. It's the same, just the
Okay.
same spot. It won't be, yeah.
Okay, got it.
Yes. That's it. And the times were adjusted, and school gets out at 3:48, as you can see at the bottom. There's a 10-minute window that students are given to jump on the bus, and then we leave from there.
So I had one question though on Winston, because school starts at 8 and it has a bus arriving at 8.
Yes, everything is right at 8 or before. So,
So you feel that one needs to be earlier?
Well, school, the Charterville is 8. The others were all 7:55 or earlier. That was the only one that I saw that was 8.
we'll make sure it's not a user error. Yeah, that should be,
It's, yeah, the amended one has 7:55 on it.
there you go.
Yep. The one in the packet is the one that they discussed at the.
Sorry, so it's,
So she gave, but this is 8 o'clock on this one.
Yeah,
So
it's
it
not
should be-
changed on this one.
it should be 7:55, so that's a error on my end.
So is it 5 minutes earlier on all the stops there?
Not all of them, some of them are earlier than that, but,
Oh, okay.
yes, it's 7:55. And obviously, these are
Yeah,
based off of road conditions,
Right.
how quick the stops and all that comes through there, so.
So I think that's about it. The transportation committee had a great meeting with the county and everyone was in agreement about our updated routes, just 1 mileage difference on route number 2. And we will get that submitted to the state and updated.
Have enough drivers, good on drivers.
Yeah, everybody's, we'll have mostly all new drivers this year, but we're all set to go.
Move to approve the 2023, 2024 bus routes.
That's presented.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the 2023, 2024 bus routes as presented. Is there any discussion?
Just a thanks to the Woodruff family for their service.
Definitely.
Yeah, that transportation meeting, they did give them a thank you and a plaque to go, so yes, thank you.
Yeah, it was nice time.
Yeah. Discussion. Discussion. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion passed. Approve the student attendant agreements.
We just had a couple more student attendant agreements as you guys went through last meeting. That's just normal business. If you would please approve those.
Move to approve the attendance agreement as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the attendance agreements as presented. Is there any discussion?
Are they all, none of the schools or taking students from, or districts are taking students from are charging us tuition, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, and we're not charging tuition yet on that?
No.
Okay, just so we have reciprocity is all I was looking for.
Yes.
If they're gonna charge us, we're gonna charge them.
Yeah.
This list is actually all students going other schools, correct? Yes.
Yes.
I believe they would just clean up items from other districts.
Any further discussion? Discussion, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion passed. And yeah, we're gonna forego the changes to the playground fence pending some more research and information. Approved school bus purchase and possible trade. So we had this on there, depending on how that conversation with Ed went tonight and the desire of the board. I guess I'm under the impression that we're gonna look for some further information before we make any decision.
Yeah, I don't, willing to buy a new one if you don't have to buy a new one.
Right.
One thing I would mention is maybe just to be ready, that they do, if we saw a great deal or something like that, then maybe we could do like a virtual meeting just to make sure. So I'll keep you guys posted, and if something comes up, since we're shopping, like Ed said, there's been some that he's seen for sale that, were gone quickly, like it is with automobiles right now. So if I were to call like an emergency meeting or something like that, where we could get together quickly to make something happen if we found the right bus and everyone was on the same page.
So to that point, is there a benefit to just giving you an authorization to spend up to so much?
I believe because it'd be over 80,000, we would have to have approval from the board.
Well, yeah, I was thinking maybe more closer to what Jeremy was pricing.
Oh yeah, I see what you're saying. I don't know, with as much details, I'd probably rather have you all make the decision than with there's being so many different factors of like electric or propane or diesel. I don't want to necessarily be the one to call the shot and then have it not be a good situation a few years down the road or something. So.
Okay, we will hold off consideration on that one. Moving into personnel and employment.
Okay, good timing, you guys. All right, so as we move into personnel, I've had a few exciting ones to add even just today. So I have it listed there, you'll just approve as presented. So I'm going to read off a few more, and I will give a chance for our guests to visit. So first of all, we'll go ahead and just let Mr. Horn, Coach Horn, introduce your new colleague and explain that position for us.
Yeah. This is Coach Van Diest. He was my football coach back at Carroll. We don't have enough time in this meeting to talk about everything that he's done, but what's important to me is that Coach contacted me and asked to be down here for our kids in Townsend. He's retired 2 or 3 times already, but he never stopped coaching. He's doing it because he wants to be here for the kids at Townsend, just like Jace Lewis. For me, the most important thing is we can go find a great coach who knows everything, but if they don't want to be here for our kids, it doesn't matter. And both these guys, they want to be here for these kids at Townsend, and we want to see them succeed. And that's not just winning, you know what I mean? Wins and losses take care of themselves. These guys are here for the right reasons, and that's why we're excited as a staff to have Coach and to have Jace come back here. 2 amazing people that are good for the program. They're good for the kids to be around. They're good role models for them to look up to and see and talk to. And it's somebody that's not me or Coach Sell or Coach Leonard that's been here for a little bit. It's a new voice, saying things in a different sort of way. So that makes a big difference. You know what I mean? Coach Van Diest, if you want to say something here real quick, Coach, I'll let you. If you don't want to, that's okay. Jace is up on the high line working tonight, so he couldn't be here again. But thank you guys for giving us a chance to just come in here and at least introduce ourselves.
Like Joe said, I'm excited to be here. This was my decision to come down. I went off for my help to Joe. It's payback time for him, for me. He just had to put up with me. And this is great. I love coaching football. I've coached high school football only 1 year, I was 45. But I remember now what it's like being a 14-year-old up to being out here with these freshmen a few times and how much there's to learn. But I'm excited to be here. I'm here to help you as a school board. I'm on a school board at St. Andrews up in Helena, so I know how important that is. But I just want to be here to help coach and to be around, and I'm going to be here. Anything you need of me and asking me, please do it, okay? Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much. We're honored to have you. There was one full vacancy of a assistant football coach, so Jason, Coach Van Diest would be splitting that. So that would be an incredible honor and great for our program. So, yes.
Coach Horn, I just want to say how much I appreciate, your enthusiasm and your dedication, taking this step and your talk of developing the program and not necessarily worried about the wins and losses. Like you said, they'll take care of themselves. But a lot of our programs need the enthusiasm and the dedication to developing the program that I've seen in the last couple of months with you. And I appreciate that and look forward to seeing where the program goes.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that back. I really do. And for what it's worth, I know you guys up there, a couple of you have some kids that have been showing up in the morning in the weight room. And to watch them go up there and go to work like they have is fantastic. And I love that our volleyball and our girls basketball players are up there at the same time with our football players, and we've got baseball players up there. They're still students here at Broadwater High. They're gonna be involved in something. And the fact that they're all up there together and working, says a lot about them, but a lot of, just good on you guys for putting some work ethic in those kids, because they get up there and they listen and they just go right to work.
Good, thank you for that. All right, back to you.
Okay, so the other hires we have, paraprofessional Melissa Sims. For substitute, we have Louis Tulos and Hannah Mart. For a volunteer and substitute, we have Margaret Robertson. For after-school program, we have Hannah Mart again. For middle school teacher and middle school and high school foreign language teacher, we have Amy De Jesus. And for assistant football coach, like we discussed, we have 0.5 Jace Lewis and 0.5 Michael Van Diest. And we have one resignation of Amanda Hazlett from ASAP sub-coordinator, which we have absorbed into office staff work.
Okay. Is there a motion on those? I'll make a motion to approve as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve both the hires and the resignations as presented. Is there any discussion? Discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion passed. Again, thank you for taking the time to come in here tonight. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you, Beth. Look forward to seeing you.
Okay. Do we want to do, I'm going to recommend that we do the reports from the principal and superintendent before we dive into the policy stuff. Is everybody all right with that? Yep. Okay. Because I think that's the more informational items. And then if there's a few people that want to take out of here, they can before we dive into that. So,
Is he good now? Jeremy?
thank you
Is he
both.
good now?
Well, yeah, the bus is good to go.
Okay,
There's set in place up there and we can get home tomorrow.
okay, thank you.
Thank you both for coming.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Christina, if you've got any more to add to what you've already said, I don't know. But
Honestly, the 21st Century Grant's been taking a lot of time, but after the summer camps have been really full and busy. And today we had kids paddleboarding out on the lake. And tomorrow they are going fishing below the dam. We've got a group of kids right now that are in Whitefish Kalispell area. They went up to Whitefish Mountain and did the sky rail and alpine slide and the tree adventure park. And then they're camping at the KOA and enjoying all those amenities. And then tomorrow they're going to the Vortex House in Columbia Falls. And then we've got some other camps that are right here on campus where they're doing some hands-on learning and application. So this is the first week back in July. The June camps were full and very successful. So another 2 more weeks after this, and then we're done for the summer. And then extended school year, we have started that up as of this week. So we do have a few students that are here a couple days a week in the afternoons with Mrs. Hanson. So I appreciate her time that she puts in and had great attendance for that.
thank you. Any questions? Okay.
All right. So I've been keeping you guys in the loop on what we're working on in the business office. A couple of important things I just wanted to highlight tonight was staffing. So we do have, we have one more interview tomorrow morning, and we had one interview last week for the school counselor position. Neither have been fully certified. One is a teacher that has been working as a Some districts call it different things like social emotional learning coach, those kinds of things. So they still teach the guidance counselor curriculum in the classroom, and do some social groups with kids about getting along. We call them friendship groups and some of that kind of stuff, the anti-bullying kind of lessons. And they also are testing coordinators for our districts. So they still do those kinds of things. So the one gal that we interviewed from Washington has a teaching degree, but has been working in that capacity. And we're interviewing someone tomorrow that's local and has a social worker degree that works for DPHHS currently. And is enrolled in a school counseling program. So there's some different ways around that. We might have to apply for an authorization or something through OPI since we don't meet the licensure requirements. I know Whitehall's been doing something similar for 5 years now. They haven't been able to get a licensed counselor. So that's where we're at. I'm just glad we have a couple of candidates that are passionate about it and interested. So we'll see how that goes. And then we do have one interview set up for the PE teacher position, and they would need housing. So we're looking at that. We wish we had more interest. I don't know necessarily how they found out about it or where it came from. We do have as much out there as we can. We're on Indeed right now. We're on Facebook. We have MREA posting for us. I have updated the OPI postings weekly so they get brought to the top of the list. I made sure that it's right on there, 4-day school week, housing available, those kinds of things, trying to attract people. So that's where we're at staffing wise. Those are the major areas of concern. We're getting ready to post for the site coordinator for after school and 5th day programming. Wanted to kind of wait to see what happened tonight. And besides that, most of our positions are falling in order. And we do have it right on the front of the website too. I've taken your guys' feedback on some of those different components. So then budget wise, we are, oh yeah, sorry.
Have you interviewed the one PE applicant yet?
No.
If you interview them and they don't meet our standards here at the school, what are our options?
I think Deborah Silk was wise, and I'm not sure if you all heard her comments the other night. I'm trying to remember if she said that kind of in between the training time or when that came about, but basically what she said was not to hire anyone that didn't meet our standards, right? So I think it's important that we find a good fit. I know I've talked to Mr. Odell and Miss Heverin and even, like Coach Horn and other coaches that we want to make sure that that person is a good fit for our school and our athletics program as a whole. So
I wonder do we have a backup plan in place or?
I know I've talked to a few long-term potentials for like long-term sub or things like that. We do not have a great backup plan in place. We have not gotten to that point yet, but we have talked about bringing in the folks that we do have that have a PE endorsement and seeing if they'd be willing to shift some of their classrooms or schedules around so that we could cover PE. We haven't gotten quite that far, and was really hoping we'd get some more. Maybe now that the holiday week's over, and maybe we'll get some more interest. I don't know, but it's pretty wild because back in the day, I mean, and the universities discouraged students from getting that endorsement because they couldn't find a job. And now if you look on OPI,
Yeah.
they need a PE teacher in Helena, Bozeman, I mean, all around us. So it might not be likely that we get a licensed Montana applicant.
As a counselor position, though, Cindy and I have been kind of discussing different ideas. We're kind of trying to have a backup plan on how we can make it work. So we've got some good ideas, just try to get through the interviews first.
Yep. So that's what I have on staffing. As we talk about budget, I've been working closely with Casey and Pam on our money that we had remaining from our state overbase. So we had our fiscal year end for our regular general fund and closed out that. So then we went back to the requisitions that we're not able to pay of supplies for next year that have been requested with the rest of the overbase money that we have. And we're going through that. So I'll provide you more details as we get them. But right now, we were able to identify today and through the last week, we've been looking at which ones of these requisitions we could use other funding. So we have some other grants that we can utilize, like the targeted school grant that we can purchase some of our curriculum requests with, the sensory paths. We know the PACS behavior grant would work for. So just looking at some of those, and then also just making sure that I got together with Christina and other principals and coaches. A lot of what's on here is athletics also, so uniforms. I know like the ice maker for the training rooms, a $4,000 price tag. And I brought up the booster club and maybe some of those other opportunities rather than this money that's still considered general fund being utilized for some of that. So I'd like to see what else we can cover. So we're all working together to see how we can cover that, because if we just took it all out of the overbase, we'd be $39,000 over. So this is the last of basically the wish list or the items that we needed to order for next year. The only other one is the Chromebooks. There was about $40,000 worth of Chromebooks requested, which would take up most of the rest of our technology fund's current balance. So I asked that we hold off on that and think about that and really look at those numbers again and see what we can do. I just want to make sure we have money in the technology fund if we have urgent needs or larger equipment type needs. But we had a good conversation today about that as well. So those are some important updates I wanted to give you on budget, and then obviously we'll move into focusing on next year's budget planning. So those were the main ones that I had that I wanted to report on tonight. I think we have had a lot of great discussions, and we talked to Jim earlier through the committee meetings. I think we've covered most everything else I can think of. So if you guys are ready, we can move into policy.
Just had a question since you brought up the ice maker. If we've had any discussions on with Billings Clinic about part-time trainer or somebody that could help with injuries and referrals back to Billings Clinic or anything like that?
That's a good question. I know we have a volunteer, and she's been awesome, that comes over and helps. And there's a few that we have that help out at games.
One in football for sure.
Yeah.
So the district I was with before, they actually had like a group that would go around to different games. So they shared them with all kinds of schools. Is there some kind of
Like a co-op
or
of that?
something that has something like that? Because I'd have to call and find out how they were tied together, but we had trainers at every event.
Yeah.
And the reason I brought it up, because you mentioned the ice machine, but similar, we had a local medical clinic that actually paid for an actual full-time trainer to be at sporting events.
Interesting. Yeah.
One of the things I've noticed we often lack is just a good medical response at events. So, and I thought maybe the way they did it was because all the referrals went straight back to the clinic because they're employees of the clinic and their ortho docs then got all the referrals for all the injuries.
That's good. Good question. Yeah, I know we have some volunteers, and whether they're employed.
Yeah, ambulance is usually at the football games, right?
Yeah. Whether they're employed at the clinic, I'm not sure. We do have a gal that helps out quite a bit. So yeah, that's a good question. Otherwise,
Well, ours is a different state, but I just thought with them expanding and their interest in expanding the community.
Yeah, that's a good question.
The conversation at least, showing up at practice one day a week or something, just to help address injuries.
I know most of the kids go to Coach Horn or certain folks. I can put a Band-Aid on, that's about it, but. So,
I guess I got one technology thing. I don't know if it needs to go technology committee or how, but I know Jason brought it up kind of on an email this week, is looking at our website and trying to find ways to make that, I think, more user-friendly. Again, I'm not the person to do that, but I'm a good test candidate. So if you want to put something out there, then I can tell you whether it's farmer-friendly or not. But I think that is something I would like to, and I don't know, I guess I'm looking, but some group, some people, we need to look at that. But we need to include people that aren't necessarily.
Would you like to be a part of that? Is that what you're asking?
I would be happy to
Okay, so.
because I think we need people that aren't tech savvy, because so many of, our community isn't. So, we do need test subjects to say, okay, is this easy? He was talking about, finding documentation that went with, and it was broken into different parts and pieces in it. So I think we can do better, I guess, and I would like us to look into how we can do that better.
And I appreciate the criticism. I take kind of sole ownership on that, as well as Mrs. Heverin.
I didn't know that, so I wasn't pointing a finger at you.
Yeah, so Sherry and I usually vet everything through her, and then I take it to the superintendent or have the superintendent on the conversation. That's how it's gone in the past. Before I was managing it, Mr. Holland was a little bit of a part of it, as well as a few others, and it got to be a mess, which is, it's gone a lot better than it had been, but there has definitely been some things that have been missed. I had a student that was helping me, a couple, actually not this past school year, but the year before, and he made a lot of the changes, and I would approve them with Mrs. Heverin. And so there's been bits and pieces there that are still kind of out there. So yeah, it's definitely something that we need to look at. I would be more than happy to sit down with anybody that's interested in going over it and kind of addressing some of the issues where things are not organized like they probably should be.
Okay. Yeah. No, I think it would be good for all of us, and definitely for the community, if we could do some work and get some more input, I guess, on what it would take to make it so people feel comfortable using it and find it a reliable source to get the information that they're looking for.
And I think that's really important now, because we are starting to move some of our stuff to digital.
Right.
Like the free and reduced stuff's gonna be digital. And so I think that's really important that we have a good setup for them, and even maybe having nights where they can help fill out forms, because I just had a form they had to fill out for the Whitefish Mountain, and half of them got it wrong. I mean, it was simple, 2 lines, they still spread so.
That'd be me.
We had to redo all of it. I think this was a mess.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. If we could.
Susie, where are we going with phones for the contract? We had the big, long discussion last meeting about phones and not having enough phones or too many phones, or have we resolved what we're going to do for this year yet in terms of getting actual bids and being adequate and all that?
So we're working with Broad Voice to get the ball rolling, and starting with what we said, the base amount of phones. So we're still going through the list on that, but got the call into them to start working with us and get that started. So
I know on Friday, Luke had a call with Broad Voice to kind of go over the preliminary setup, and he's gone through and identified a group of numbers for fax lines and stuff, and trying to figure out how to pull all the other numbers together and everything. I know he's in the process of working on it right now.
I've seen some of the drafts of the phone lists, and
If you were concerned about the cost, the updated quote actually came in $8 per month less. So it was within the budget approved.
Surprisingly.
Yeah.
Right.
All right.
Not something I usually say.
get a gold star.
Good job.
Less money.
That's right. Anything that says less money, you get a gold star.
It felt weird coming out.
All right. Any other questions for Mrs. Edelman?
Are we still gonna look back at, I guess, having more discussion on location of additional phones? I know that was part of last month's meeting, that through this process, that would be revisited. Is that-
Yeah, I guess my thought on it was to, and we've communicated and worked together on where we think those critical areas are and work with Luke on that beginning list. And then once we have the teachers back and all of that, especially this last couple of weeks is pretty much, and even, Luke and Joe took some time off, so it's pretty impossible to get a hold of anyone, but we'll keep building on that and having those conversations. If there's any areas we need to add lines to, that'll be pretty easy to identify. But we wanted to make sure we had phones in when school started, so
Sure.
yeah. I did.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't, maybe not in the phone board meeting, but I did get a cell phone so that on Fridays, people will be able to push through to that line too. Then we'll have an administrator be in charge of on Fridays so that people can always reach the school.
And the after-school program has a phone. So.
And yeah, Jim and the after-school program, the athletic director, and then there'll be an administrative cell phone.
Thank you. All right, now on to the policy updates. So there's kind of a couple ways we can look at this. I don't want anybody to ever think that we're just here to, broadly rubber stamp big mass, things like this. But so we can go through these one at a time. We can open it up for discussion, on the whole list. If people took the time to read through them, the past board this last year did the deep dive, and we went through every one of the policies, basically policy by policy. What is reflected here is MTSBA's recommendations to update those, predominantly based on legislative changes that came about through the legislative session. What Susie put in the board packet reflects, where those changes came from, and a brief description, on how it affects it. But clearly, I'm open to suggestions on how everybody wants to proceed.
So these policy changes are based off of recommendations that were legally bound by legislation.
Not necessarily, because, that we have to follow the law, yes. But the policies aren't necessarily just the law itself. They're a reflection of how we as a district can implement a policy based on the law. But it's not just, the policy isn't just a law. We have the individual authority as a board to develop our policies based on what the law says, but how we implement that is how we change it.
Like there's quite a few of them, for example, that say the policy provides for public notice. So just updating it because there's now more things that were required to give public notice of. And then, some of them is just as simple as updating the legal references to current law. So some of them are very simple. Some of them are updates based on new legislation or expansion of legislation, such as work-based learning, or like you guys saw the exceptional enrollment one, and I've actually sent you a couple emails on that one. That's one I was been keeping a close eye on because in case we did do the 4-year-olds. So it just explains how that works. They changed that a little bit with how 4-year-olds work. The early enrollment or exceptional circumstances. So, and some of them just details like video surveillance, obviously, as technology has grown over the course of time. If districts are gonna use facial recognition, we now have to do something, different, take another step with that.
There was a variety as I looked at them. I had optional language, so the board could go either way or choose to implement parts of the policy or not parts of the policy. How do you want to handle those? Because you thought you go some of them one by one to address individual language on which way the board wants to fall. But I don't know off the top of my head which ones all those were. I just remember looking through it and there was red language in some of them that said optional this or optional that, or the board may select from these four options, that kind of stuff. So just to do a blanket adoption is kind of difficult.
Yeah.
Fair numbers.
The first one I see is that 1010 FE.
I think it left it to the board to define what exceptional circumstances we wanted to select from for 4-year-olds, but if we're not going to do 4-year-olds, then we don't need to adopt that policy, right?
Yeah, and that's when, for example, I could provide you with some sample language from other districts or recommendations, if we wanted to table that one. And part of that was, at first we were talking about just doing 5 or so, and then it was like, well, it's all pretty basic from legislation, let's try to do it. And then we had 400 and however many pages here, so. So I do like option B on 1010 FE, which allows present community circumstances to be used for homeless students and in-district students. Which already spells out in there if you choose that one. But where it says like age 3 or 4, you could change that to which one you want it to be.
We're not doing 4, right?
Not at this moment, no.
I'd like us to have that option too. And that's why we have the Chromebooks here, if we want to get on and go through, or if you want,
If you want to get on it and look at that.
or if you want to pick,
That's why I said if we want to go through so many of them and then decide we're done, we can. Work too.
if we want to go through a certain number at a time, we can certainly do that.
So this list that we have right now, they're just ones that have been updated from the last.
Yeah, I just wanted that as soon as this came out, I just wanted to get it before you. They completed the legislative policy packet update, so that's what all of this is.
Okay.
These are all the policies that were impacted by the legislative session.
And they have proposed language for each one, or is it just?
Yeah, and that's what this is.
That's what all that is.
This is just these policies. So we were talking about trying to go through all of them, but like you said, it's a little much.
Well, I'm wondering if maybe we start going down the list and we just look at these and I mean, like the first one, the policy provides for new definitions and legal references. To me, that seems pretty straightforward. Can we just knock those off the list as we're going through and then mark the other ones that, okay, we're going to table them for either later tonight or the next meeting?
Yeah, another idea just from a board and kind of work groups that thought is we could also assign you each, 4 to look through carefully and then bring your recommendation to the board on for the next board meeting too. Or maybe just those ones that are left that are more complex.
Probably filter out some, so we're not
Yep.
so much. What ones I filter out is.
I like that idea.
Okay, so we'll just start with model policy 1005 FE, proficiency-based A and B.
Approve as amended. I don't think it would. If it's just the inline edits, it's just as simple.
Yeah, I don't see anything on that one that has any changes, like an option or anything.
No.
Okay, so, yeah, I guess we just need a motion and a second to approve each one as we go down. Is that a motion?
Oh,
That's a
Okay, second. I thought we were gonna take some homework. Sorry.
We will.
We're just getting.
Oh,
we're just getting
some,
started.
okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
There's some that don't.
So it's been moved and seconded to approve
way.
approve model policy 1005
I'll
FE,
open
proficiency-based A and B as presented. Is there any discussion? Discussion, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion passed.
Can you please remind me who was the first and second?
Jason Poole was the maker of the motion and Daniel was the second.
Thank you.
Move 1006 FE adopt as amended. Presented.
Oh, goodness. Okay.
I guess.
I'm gonna have
There's
to
no
dig
options for that one either. It's just,
We can alter them to suit us how we want to is,
Yes.
yeah. Is there questions on using money for safety?
No, this is basically telling us or outlining some changes because of the legislature that we can use
Right.
money for. Yeah.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve model policy 1006 FE funds transfer for school safety. Is there any discussion? Discussion, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion passed. Model policy 1007 FE, multi-district agreements.
So the big change to this one is the multicultural learning environment. It's more for those districts that have immersion programs so they can co-op and partner on that part is the section that's amended. I don't see a current situation in which it would apply to us, but
So do we have to adopt a policy that wouldn't be applicable?
I think we already have this
We have
policy.
multi-district agreements.
This is just the section that the legislature, let's see, amended because updated because of the definitions and authorization for the specific program of the cultural immersion. So, I don't think it would hurt us to adopt it as presented. It's not necessarily going to apply to us, but they did make the changes in the reference to law in this, so. I don't know of any immersion programs within quite a few miles of us, but I don't see anything harmful in adopting it as amended.
Okay, I move to approve 1007.
Moved and seconded to approve model policy 1007 FE, multi-district agreements. Is there any discussion? Discussion, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion passed. Model Policy 1009, FE teacher recruitment and retention.
How about I take a look at this and get back with the committee?
Yeah, and this is something that's important to schools right now, obviously. So it'll be nice for us to have a good understanding of. It changes some of the retirement qualifications and some of those components so that we can get people in those vacancies that we have right now. So if you would take the time, Chase, that'd be great.
We're on to Policy 1010, FE.
I would like, and if someone wants to work with me on it, I don't know if Vanessa, if you want to look at this one with me or somebody else, but I would like to bring some recommendations on this. Just like I said, I was familiar with the previous one and could look at components that would help us going forward. And so if the district ever wanted to utilize that opportunity to allow students in on the early exception.
Yeah, I can do that.
Okay, moving on to Policy 1110.
That's pretty basic, just that we will make sure everyone knows you're a trustee once you become a trustee.
A move.
So moved. No, OPI gets your information 14 days after you qualify. That's it.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve Model Policy 1110, taking office. Is there any discussion? Discussion, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, motion passed. Policy 1400.
This is required by law, and just saying that we now have to post online all board meetings, special board meetings, committee meetings, and possible closed sessions. We're already doing this. Some districts didn't have a website still that I knew of, so that might have been a challenge for, but
Make a motion 1400.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve Policy 1400. Is there any discussion? Discussion, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, motion passed. Policy 1700.
yeah, we missed that one somehow.
1650. We'll have to add it.
We can put that on later, and we should probably have someone look at it. Yeah, it's in my packet here, printed out too. It's just not on the list, so I'm not sure why. We'll save that one for later.
So still policy.
Is that one assigned?
1700.
1650 set aside.
No, has it been assigned to, is someone working on it?
No, it just needs added. It's not in this
Oh,
list.
okay.
Got a whole lot of new stuff.
That's probably.
Yeah, yeah, it is. It's the brand new legislation.
That might be just something for us all to look into.
Yes, I would recommend.
Okay, so 1700 is the one.
So this one is just stating, like we're working on, that we make sure we have the grievance procedures available in an easy to find location on the website, as we were discussing, and also with the handbooks. Most of this, we've already worked through this with Chris Goss. He currently has our handbooks under revision. So I believe we are good to go. If we approve this one as amended, that will be great.
Moved and seconded to approve 1700. Is there any discussion? Discussion, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion passed.
Guess my only question on that one real quick is where we have the policies listed and the uniform complaint procedures in the policies, does that qualify or does it need its own specific spot on the website?
It needs its own
It's
spot.
something I want to make sure that we do, make sure it's.
Yeah, so when we post the handbooks, we need to, I think, right under the handbooks, like have the grievance,
its own
uniform
tab.
grievance procedure tab.
Okay, 2015. I don't know that. You answered that question.
So 2050 allows us to have partial enrollment. I think that this is important. It just clarifies some of that with the partial A and B if we have students that are attending a portion of the day.
Yeah, redefine remote versus on-site. I think that's a lot of work.
Right. We have had students, we usually encourage them to attend 2 courses so we can get quarter time enrollment if we have part-time students.
I'll move to approve amendment of 2050.
We moved and seconded to approve policy 2050. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion passed. 132.
So this is just making sure that we're providing notice. And we already do this.
To approve 2132 is.
Moved and seconded to approve policy 2132. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion passed. 2140.
So this is the policy that added information on career coaching. For the partnerships with DLI and the more technical career opportunities. So vocational technical programs. And it's part of the changes in flexibilities in licensure that they're allowing staff that aren't, and this probably goes back to what we're seeing also is having a challenge to have a licensed counselor. So it's basically another position called a career coach that has different licensing requirements.
I'll move to approve 2140 as amended.
Second. Moved and seconded to approve policy 2140. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion passed. 2158.
So this is the family engagement one. Mrs. Hartman can even speak to this, and we have been doing this, and it just makes it a little bit more robust and talks about involving the district board and the policies a little bit more. But this is all about the family engagement requirement, and we had some meetings. We had a really good turnout last year. Ms. Hartman did a nice job, and we had, maybe it was the ice cream bar we set up, I don't know, but we had some good turnout. I used to buy lunch just to try to get the federal required amount of parents there at previous schools, but we did one in the evening and we had good turnout. And Jason, you were there. There's different components. We have to be able to show a sign-in sheet for the after-school grants and title program and those that we've gotten parent involvement. So that's a pretty standard one.
Keep expanding.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have any students with special pronoun use?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so the motion was made to approve 2158. Is there a second? I will second it.
Please remind me of the first.
Chase.
Thank you.
Been moved and seconded to approve policy 2158. Is there any discussion? Discussion, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion passed.
I will just state real quick back to your question, Vanessa, that I did have Bia come in and train the staff and make sure we were following the law on the pronoun use part. And I wanted to hear that it coming from her rather than me, like it's not something I'm requesting of you, it's in law.
Oh, for the.
For the pronoun sec part, it was part of a legal training that Bia Kalava did for our staff, just to make sure if they had a situation like that happen, they knew how to handle it in accordance to law. And that we were all on the same page. So she did train the administration and teachers and secretaries on how to handle that.
Is there any concerns?
I think it was really helpful having her just explain how it needs to be standard across the state and in our schools and what's expected and how to basically keep us out of trouble in that area and what we have to do versus, what.
Can you share with us what we have to do?
We have to call the student by their requested name, not their legal name that's in the Infinite Campus.
The requested name, so they can change their name?
Mm-hmm. Yep, and for pronouns, if you do make a mistake and call a student by the incorrect name or pronoun, you do not have to apologize. You just are supposed to, if you catch yourself, try to correct yourself. Sometimes it's hard after, especially if you've had a student for a long time, so then you're not necessarily, oh, I'm sorry. You just need to say Brittany or whatever, switch it. So
I think after she did that, it actually helped everyone, and I think there was a lot of uproar about some things for a while, and then once that happened, it just disappeared. It's like, okay, they all had a better understanding, and it just wasn't an issue anymore.
What we need to do and why and what we don't need to worry about.
And I think it calmed it down then, because you just didn't hear about it anymore after that.
Because some people were kind of initially I don't think we have to do that. I don't agree with that or whatever. And then that's why I thought it was just good for them to hear it from her. It wasn't I'm asking, or I believe this. It's not about beliefs. It's about us following the law.
And I think you see people get, like anyone, the kids are gonna get really upset and they're gonna push more buttons. And I think they learned that, oh, if I just handle this that way, they quit. Just didn't see as much of it then.
Okay.
And you can just use they, them if you don't feel comfortable using his or her in the role reversal. So there's options.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
Policy 2167, advanced courses. This one does have an option at the bottom that says no correspondence courses are offered. Other than that, if we implement policy 2167, it defines what the process for that.
So we kept this policy?
We did, actually. I was reading that first paragraph. We actually helped create that language when we did this, because the part that was in there, the National University Extension Association, that nobody had ever even heard of that. So we actually worked to help create that second paragraph that they're adopting now. Yeah.
Adopted as originally proposed, or adopted as amended?
I think that was part of it.
Yeah, he's basically they've sent this amendment now to everybody. But yeah, I think, the discussion was, whether we are or not currently, I think having the policy there that gives us the opportunity, is something worthwhile, as we look at different ways to provide opportunities for students. Correspondence courses could become more and more utilized in the future, so.
So what are we doing with the optional?
Basically,
line
we
there?
would just, we will just ask him to remove that when if we implement the policy, I'm guessing he'll just remove that. If we chose not to do it, then they would just remove the policy altogether.
Oh, I see, it's an either or.
Yeah.
Okay. I thought
That's
it
the
was
way
an-
I'm reading it.
I thought it was an additional thing
No.
at first, but okay.
Move to approve 2167 as amended.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve policy 2167. Is there any discussion? Discussion. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion passed. 2168. Remote instruction.
This just gives the district more flexibility in allowing.
Right, and a lot of it's just changing the terminology from distance to remote.
Mhm.
State law and regulation from the MREA.
Let's see the options in that.
Yeah, if approved by the superintendent, so allowing a remote course to be utilized with superintendent approval. I think this is helping in the direction we want to go with allowing more opportunities for online courses and some of that. Well, keeping in the mind that we want to maintain the balance of not just have our students sign up for everything with the University of Phoenix online or something, but that there are options if there's a certain class that, or they've like exceeded our math
Well, I
classes
think the
available.
opportunity really lies in some of the dual credit stuff.
Yeah.
Because where we don't have, the ability to offer a lot of dual credit stuff, I think this opens the door and allows them to gain that, outside of this building.
I'll move to approve the amendment of 2168.
Second. It's been moved and seconded to approve policy 2168. Is there any discussion? Discussion. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passed. 2170 and 2170P. Kind of follows right.
Yes, there are some options on 2170P.
Maybe that one, do we want to kick that one out and spend a little more time on it with all the options that are there? So,
Yeah.
On 2170P,
yeah,
do you want to adopt 2170?
I think let's just do them together.
Okay.
Just to make sure we don't do partial.
Does anybody in particular want to look at those closely?
I don't know. I think we just need to have it.
On their
on
next
an-
one?
On an agenda that doesn't have quite so many, just so we can spend a little more time as a group.
Okay.
Okay, moving 2332. Religion, religious activity. I think that one's just due to some changes in the law.
Pretty basic.
Legal references and a Supreme Court decision, I think is all I think.
Staff members may not encourage, discourage, or persuade.
Well, and of course, their official duties, so I think it provides staff more options.
Yeah. Yep.
And the other one I ran into as part of the policy, that was just the fair graduation. But it's not new, it's not amended existing, it's just there was some stuff in there that we may think about in the future.
Okay. Motion on that one.
Move as amended.
Second.
2332.
It's been moved and seconded to approve policy 2332. Any discussion? Discussion, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion passed. 2450.
You're right, Jason. We need to take a look at that graduation section. See how that applies.
Well, there was some language in the legislature too that was more broad than what that policy was dedicated to. So we're talking 2332.
Okay.
It has an MCA 2450. Or reference to.
What about that?
I was just gonna say that 2450, all it does is add a reference to a Montana code attitude.
Correct.
Changes one word in the law, required, made to required.
Okay, is there a motion on that one?
That's part of the lawsuit of Indiana that's been going on in the state.
Move as amended.
Second. It's been moved and seconded to approve model policy 2450. Is there any discussion? Discussion, all those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed, motion passed.
See, that's a good way to keep me quiet, Joe.
Policy 2600. Work-based learning. Looks like they just added some
Student focus. and
clarification.
There's collaboration with families. I like this one.
Move to approve 2600.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve policy 2600. Is there any discussion? Discussion. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, motion passed. You guys are getting really too quiet. Policy 2600.
Try and read.
Excuse me, 3100. We just
31.
This is another early enrollment one that I think we should look at.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Look at.
Policy 3110.
The thing I don't like is the word shall, but that's just it requires us to admit a child.
Yeah,
Takes
districts
away
used to
that.
have the choice whether they had part-time enrolled students or not. This says that we're now required to allow homeschool students to attend partial days and that we will get A and B for it.
And that comes from the legislative change, or that's just, okay, well, then we don't have an option.
From House Bill 396. And we've already been doing this, but I know districts that haven't.
Yeah, I just didn't want the requirement to, I didn't want the board to lose the ability to make that decision, but if we
Yeah.
lost that already, then kind of move.
Okay, is there a motion?
Moved.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve policy
Sure, I
3110.
knew I was right.
Is there any discussion? Discussion, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Policy 3120, sorry, motion passed.
Everybody's a lot louder on that one.
Just trying to keep moving.
So this is about student, allows for absences based on students' or parents' beliefs. so that they can still, their absence can be waived.
Based on their beliefs or their rights, or
Both, yeah,
both,
Based on like the curriculum was being taught, they can.
that they opted out of. That was my understanding of it.
Okay. I move to approve. Unless there's other context that Susie, Christina, you have for us on this.
it's something we already do, so. I don't-
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of another example, but we already do it, so.
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded to approve policy 3120. Is there any discussion? Discussion, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion passed. 3121 and 3121P.
Yeah, it's very similar. to the
Yeah,
other ones.
Again, it has a lot to do with remote.
Move to approve.
Second. It's been moved and seconded to approve policy 3121 and 3121P. Is there any discussion? Discussion, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, motion passed. Policy 3141.
This one's got some optionals in it. You wanna?
Okay, yep, we'll bring that one back. Policy 3150. This is again due to
Looks like.
part-time
Find out more.
enrollment and.
Do you guys know examples? Like, the only thing I can think of is like my friends that house a hockey player or something like that, so they could enroll while they were here for hockey, if they were on the Bighorns, or are there other circumstances you can think of or want more information on?
Be for like international students coming over for 3 or 4
I
months.
think they're already set, though.
Are
The
they?
foreign exchange students, that's a totally different.
Is it separated parents? The kid comes to visit is here for a couple months, they can enroll here, then.
Well, it's governed with the policy we were told to look at later, so maybe we move on 3150 and 3141 go together.
Okay, we'll wait on that one then. 3226.
It's simply updated legal references on
Move.
discrimination, it's updated MCA references.
Move to approve.
Second.
I'll
It's
second.
been moved and seconded to approve policy 3226. Any discussion? Discussion, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, motion passed. 3233.
So this one talks about another required website one, Joe. That this policy needs to be made available to everybody, and parents and families shall be provided the information about all clubs and groups meeting at the school. And their option to participate or opt out. That's a lot.
What policy number is that?
32.
33.
Yeah, that's pretty. Okay, is there a motion?
I'll move to approve.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve 3233. Discussion? Discussion, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion passed. 32, 35.
It's got some optionals, but I don't know if we even have capability to do.
I thought our new video
Facial
system, I thought you could, facial recognition.
So, okay, so explain to me, because I am not on that 3233 right at the moment.
So it,
Go ahead.
oh, sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
It just talks about video surveillance and we have the options. Option 1, video recordings will be totally without sound. Option 2, it's the decision of the district that video will include audio. The superintendent will notify folks of that. And then option 3 has to do with facial recognition. So what
So
do we
the
have?
facial recognition part of it, what's it say? Because I know they were talking about making changes to that.
If video cameras or surveillance equipment
Just
utilized.
more
in the district
notification.
Include facial recognition technology, all signs and methods of notification shall include.
So our cameras are capable of doing that, and there's several of them that have that enabled. I know that with speaking with the manufacturer, that if and when the state decides to make it so that we can't use that technology, that technology will not be available to our cameras because all of our cameras are cloud-based. But at this time, there is some cameras in the district that do have facial recognition technology in place.
So we would need
Probably
to
better go option 3.
select option 3, yep.
We need to have that posted then.
Yeah, which means we have to post it, yep.
Move to approve. Option 3.
So it's been moved and seconded to approve model policy 3235 with option 3 selected. Is there any discussion? Discussion, all
Do
those,
we still need to consider 1 and 2 or not? Are we only selecting 1 because do we have?
Well, that'd be
Yeah,
option
so
2 and
audio
3.
has been off on all of our cameras. I know previous boards had talked about that, at least that's my knowledge, and that they decided they were adamant against having any audio on, so audio has always been off on all of our cameras. There is the capability there to turn it on.
Looks like option 3 though includes that all signs and methods shall include the provisions regarding for such use of this technology. I would think it includes the rest of that. And I guess I would say that
Option
we
3,
have
the
the-
only addresses facial.
Just video, yeah, I would agree.
So if we're gonna keep audio off, then I think we're fine, because that's what we have right now. We have option 1. So we're gonna do option 1 and 3 and not 2, correct? And then the only other thing I need to know is who we're putting in the blank up there about which employees will have access to this.
Right now, all the administrators do, right?
Technology
You should.
and administrators.
Yeah, right now it's tech and admin. You should.
I would keep it that unless you're recommending different.
Nope, I just wanna make sure we're filling in the blanks.
And you're good with no sound, no audio?
I don't.
Never had to use it in the past. Anything that we've dealt with, we've been able to deal with the video.
okay,
And
so,
honestly, the facial recognition, if it was an issue, it could be turned off and, because it's not really being utilized. I mean, it's handy, but it's not something that's, I think, readily utilized anyway.
Well, I just have to provide notice
Yep.
for using it.
It helped with the sheriff's office review.
Okay.
It did, say we've had the vaping stuff,
All right.
yeah. it has.
And the burglaries.
Yeah.
okay, so just to restate, been 1 and 3 and leaving tech and admin in the blank up above.
Yeah.
Okay, any discussion? Discussion, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion passed.
Quick question. Can we, in the future, obviously we'd have to amend our policy, but can we just turn on, as long as it's posted, just have voice recording on just certain cameras? Or does it have to be a system
You
wide?
certainly could. I think you're gonna get a lot of pushback. Because initially there was a lot of pushback from staff.
I could just see it at like entrances that it could be valuable, but
Yeah.
not at this time, but it could be an issue. I can I don't want me being recorded at work. I understand that, but just in certain situations, it could be beneficial.
Yeah, we can pull a policy,
Safety-wise,
out at
I
any
think
time.
of the front door.
Right.
Pull a policy up, for discussion on
At
any
any time,
time, so. Okay, 3310.
This is, self-defense, legal references. It's just the MTA at the bottom, and added chapter 266 that was added in this year, 2023. On the first page there, you can see that.
Yeah, there's a self-defense line. Moved as amended.
Moved and seconded to approve policy 3310. Is there any discussion? Discussion, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion passed. 3413.
This just requires that we notice information as revised by law.
I move to approve.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve policy 3413. Is there any discussion?
Just that we have to make sure it's on the website and all of our forms that there's exemptions available under the law.
Which policy number was that?
I have them all like 3413.
3413.
I'll type up a summary of all of them and like which ones are going to the website, which ones certain people said they review, and obviously which ones we adopted because Chris Goss will change them on our policy.
Yeah, they're just, like I said, requires to be posted on the district website,
I'll
provide
type up a summary of this section.
families the information about exemptions under the law.
Any further discussion? Discussion, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion passed. 3510.
This one has options and quite a bit of information if you want to wait for
Okay.
more
Since you guys just got done with that one.
time.
Yep.
3550.
And that, they go together.
Okay.
I recommend we wait till we have fresh eyes on those.
4410.
Just talks about the school safety team.
Table the last two just because they go hand in hand.
I think that'd be
Yeah,
wise,
and this
Chase.
is something we've been talking a lot about. And we do currently have a school safety team. We do the first Wednesday of every month. We meet with DHHS, the county attorney, sheriff's office, all of us administrators, and we go over any cases of concern and things like that. So I'll make sure we do it right and have a
Yeah,
policy
because you
reflecting
gotta
our
have
practice.
written agreement for all the rules of operation too.
Yeah.
We did that a couple of years ago because we didn't have it. Figured out we needed that.
Cybersecurity plan. Still need a cybersecurity plan, throwing it out there.
No, that's a good point, Joe. Don't need ransomware.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Meeting adjourned.
Sure.
I'm sure.
It's like a record.
Record.